Like to call to order the February 20th, 2024 Waukegan Public School Student Achievement Committee meeting. If I could have a roll call, please.
Mr. Riddle,
Present.
Ms. McBride,
Present.
Ms. Hannah, Ms. Gonzalez, Ms. Fabian, Ms. Lenzing,
Present.
President Ewing.
Here. All right, we do have a quorum. I did hear from both board members, Gonzalez and Hannah, that they would be unable to attend this evening. We do extend our condolences to Ms. Hannah and her family as they are experiencing a loss. I expect Ms. Fabian to join us any moment. But with that, I would now like a motion to approve the minutes from the January 18th, 2024 committee meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Riddle.
Second.
Second by Mr. McBride. Any comments, questions, corrections to the minutes? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. And then we have a discussion item, so we'll go right to that, which is, go ahead.
Sorry, Board President. There was some information that we had an 8-year-old pass away in our community. If we can have a moment of silence for them and the family as well as Ms. Hannah's.
Yes, if you all take a moment of silence. Thank you, and we wish to provide comfort to all of those who are grieving at this time. So we do have a discussion item, Amplify CKLA Caminos Tier 1 Evidence-Based Literacy Curriculum for K through 5.
So good evening, Board President, Superintendent, Board members, colleagues, community members. I'm going to ask Jennifer Rice-Dela Sanchez and her team to come up and share some information regarding our Tier 1 literacy proposal.
Thank you, Dr. Cesario. Good evening, Board President, Superintendent Placencia, Board of Education, community, and colleagues. My name is Jennifer Rice-Dela Sanchez, and I'm here with a team of leaders to share and to speak to the journey that we've been on this year around disciplinary literacy for all. And also our recommendations for our pre-K, our kindergarten, through 5th grade curriculum recommendations. Alongside me, we have Pam Crowell, Nicole Mackey, Sarah Ernst, thank you, Sarah. We have Shannon Lindsay, Lisa Ambrosio, and Quinn Norman. Thank you. Tasia, thank you so much. We want to thank our Board of Education for being so supportive of our work around the science of reading, also known as evidence-based reading and writing. I do want everyone to know that we're leading from the premise that the possibility that Waukegan can become the most literate city on the map. For the past 3+ years, board member Hannah has been a champion for literacy as a basic human right. Since Public Act 103-0402, the Literacy and Justice for All has passed as law. We've stated here, yes, we've stated here many times in this very boardroom that Waukegan has been ahead of the state when it comes to adhering to multiple bodies of research around our literacy practices. Thank you, Dr. Cesario, for pushing for a comprehensive preschool through 12th grade literacy plan. Stemming from this push grows a strong D60 literacy committee that will continue our literacy work forward. Special thanks to board member Hannah and board member Lensing for their dedication to this committee. Slide 2, Lee, thank you so much. As of a month ago, our state has released guidance for all districts to align their literacy practices to. The state goals are summarized into 3 overarching goals. Goal 1, to ensure that every student receives high-quality, evidence-based literacy instruction. Goal 2, ensure every educator is prepared and continuously supported to deliver high-quality, evidence-based literacy instruction. And goal 3, that every leader is equipped to create, maintain, and sustain equitable conditions for high-quality, evidence-based literacy instruction. Ms. Mackey is going to walk us through the timeline of where we've been and where we're going.
So this document has been outward facing to the community as we continued to hold our town hall meetings in November and December. So this really outlines what have we done in the past and where are we going. So the biggest indicator and the biggest thing that we are going to do moving forward for school year 25 is the adoption of a new Tier 1 curriculum in K-5 through Amplify, CKLA, and Caminos, which is a fully bilingual knowledge building curriculum. We've also implemented a revised pacing guide in 6-8 to follow along expeditionary learning, which is a knowledge building curriculum in middle schools. We're looking at course alignment for ELA, SLA, so English language arts, Spanish language arts, science, and social studies to support systematic knowledge building in grades 6 through 8. We also did some professional development around quad text sets and what that looks like across all grade levels, and our instructional support teachers in elementary schools, our coaches in the elementary schools, and our middle school coaches got Orton Gillingham training, comprehensive and morphology to support in the classroom, and we're currently looking at our systems in pre-K and looking at evidence-based literacy and what that looks like in pre-K as we continue to move forward up to the latter grades. Next is Pam.
So there were a few things we focused on as we looked at implementing an evidence-based literacy curriculum. One was responding to teacher feedback. So we know that we've been asking teachers what's working and where do they need more support. And so we knew that a more structured program that would give them some guidance was necessary for their success. We're also, of course, aligning to the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan. We do have explicit systematic phonics curriculum, K-5, and while there is embedded phonics in the 3rd through 5th grade curriculum, we know looking at student data that our 3rd through 5th graders are not yet ready to move away from 95%. They need an additional scoop of instruction as far as foundational skills and grade level standards in 3rd through 5th. We're also heavily focused on a guaranteed and viable curriculum and leaning into Marzano for those definitions, understanding that a curriculum is guaranteed when any student at any given grade level gets the same experience regardless of the school they're enrolled in, right? So what I learn as a 2nd grader, the content I understand should not depend on the class or school that I'm enrolled in WPS. We are a unified district, right? And it's viable when our teachers can do what we're asking them to do in the time we've given them to do it. So we know that we need to align our resources for that. Next slide, please. So that's taken us on this really exciting timeline of putting together a plan and putting some options out to the community so that their voice was really guiding our work. Going forward, we're here with you tonight, looking forward to the vote next week. We have been working to plan for professional learning. We know that one key piece to success is that teachers would have curriculum in their hands and training at our next institute date. That's April 8th, right? So that puts us on a tight timeline for getting materials here and in hands so that they can touch it, feel it, and work with it before they're expected to be in front of students in August with it. And also looking at how we can revise Great Beginnings to have a Tier 1 focus so that our first-year teachers and our long-term substitutes are equipped to do the work we're asking them to do in front of our students every day. Next slide. So for this process, we put out a survey to our stakeholders, really asking them 3 key questions. Who are you in our community? Which curriculum would you like us to see implement? And how long do you think we should do that before we would even begin to consider changing? We know that in elementary we've seen some changes over the years. And so we want our teachers to feel confident and our community to feel confident in the stability of a curriculum choice. We had really good participation, about 294 participants. We visited every elementary school, so all 15 schools got their own individualized presentation. We held 3 town hall meetings, and we released a bilingual recording of the town hall meeting for our community. We do have around 270 K-5 teachers, and we see that over 230 staff members voted, so we feel that this is a strong representation of our stakeholder groups. Next slide. These were our options. So we had 2 knowledge building options. One is ARC Core, the American Reading Company, and the second one was Amplify. Amplify was chosen by a large majority. About 80% of survey participants chose Amplify as the curriculum. Some highlights for this is that it is knowledge building. It is fully bilingual. It would be the first fully bilingual K-5 curriculum that we've purchased in at least the 15 years that I've worked here. It is the companion to CKLA Skills, which is the phonics curriculum we currently use in grades K2. And it is being successfully implemented across the nation as a leading science of reading curriculum. We did also include on the next slides, you can see across all stakeholder groups that 80-20 split held. So we can see that all of our stakeholder groups preferred Amplify by a significant percentage. On our next slide, you'll see that we're recommending a 5-year implementation plan. We know that within implementation science, 5 to 7 years is research-based best practice, and so this will put us inside of that window. We also know that in order for this to be a successful implementation, we will need ongoing, consistent professional development, and so you'll see that as part of the quote that came through tonight. Again, on the next slide, just sharing that across our stakeholder groups, that 5-year period was the majority with all of our stakeholders.
So, as good educators do, we've presented a lot of background knowledge, and now we're going to go and talk about what is our aim and what are our goals. And this focuses around the Illinois State Literacy Goals that we have brought up over and over again. There are the 3 goal areas, the first one being around our students, the second being around our educators, and the third being around our leaders. You can see in the bullet points listed in each of those areas, there are very specific District 60 plans of implementation. And as you look more specifically at the educator implementation bullet points and the leadership bullet points, they are very extensive. And we hope to see that this type of support will give our students everything that they need.
So goal 1 is every student receives a high quality, evidence-based, guaranteed, and viable curriculum. Next slide, please. And so on this side, you'll see the 7 components of literacy. You'll notice that our district level phonics program are already listed underneath each component. With our new curriculum, you can see where CKLA and Caminos falls within each component. And then each student will receive a science social studies block with a language development that addresses all 7 components within our curriculum.
And of course, for bilingual education, we'll be continuing with our biliteracy development. Students will work with literacy standards in both languages every day, and they will be following the content and language allocation plan. We'll have daily literacy blocks where we'll concentrate on phonics, knowledge with all the components of language, science social studies with also language development, and then small group reading. During this time, we also had, we made up a timeline for our unit enhancement. And so it started with a visit to the Cicero School District 99 that has very similar demographics to Waukegan. We visited there because they've implemented the same curriculum there this year for the first year. And we went there basically to ask questions. How'd it go? What's the implementation look like? What are some of the pitfalls we should avoid? Things like that. So it was a very good, insightful visit that we had. Also in our timeline, we'll be doing a resource alignment. So many of the resources that we've previously purchased, we're going to ensure that we are aligning them to our current Tier 1 that we will purchase to make sure we're culturally responsive for our students. We'll also ensure that we're creating a bridging component for our dual language teachers, focusing on vocabulary with some elements of phonics. And we'll be reviewing standards, including the Next Generation Science Standards and the Illinois Social Science Standards, to ensure that they are also incorporated within our daily curriculum. And making sure we are creating a scope and sequence for our continual biliteracy development.
Next slide, please. Oh, can you go back one? So this is our daily instructional allocation for K-5. You'll notice that in kinder, first, and second, we'll continue with that 60-minute phonics block, and then in third, fourth, and fifth, that'll go to 30 minutes. The knowledge building, which is the Tier 1 curriculum that we're aiming to purchase, is going to be 60 minutes. It hits 110 in third grade because there's a few additions to it. And this is really based on the recommendations from the publishers. And then we took that and then we kind of Tetrised out where that fits within our schedule and the supports that we need. You'll see that we still will continue with our Tier 2 and 3 support. We are enhancing it and adding 20 minutes at each level just for that additional MTSS support, those additional scoops of support that we know our kiddos need. We also are going to have social studies and science aligned language development block, which is 30 minutes across the board. And then math will continue to stay, obviously, for 90 minutes in K1, 2, and then 80 minutes in third, and fourth and fifth we'll continue with the 90 minutes, and then intentionally looking at some small group support within that math block, and then we'll continue with the second step lessons per week. We can kind of fit those into social studies or science block, and then some practice activities can be embedded when we do rotations from our whole group to maybe that Tier 2, 3 support. Next slide, please. So this is what we are providing for all schools, is really that scope and sequence, so that all teachers and all leaders really know when they go into a classroom, this is where the teacher should be with pacing and what they should be teaching. And it supports teachers in identifying where they either need some additional support to get caught up, or even where they can have some of those collegial conversations, so that we come back to that guaranteed piece that Ms. Crowell was talking about in the previous earlier. Next slide, please. This is a draft sample kindergarten schedule, the scope and sequence. So it lays out really what a whole year at a glance would look like for a kindergarten student. What's in red is really the Spanish minutes, and then what's in blue is the blue minutes. English, sorry, are the English minutes. Next slide, please. And then this is a draft fourth grade sample. And here's Quinn.
Hi. Using the scope and sequence, as we can see here, we will be providing field trips that are aligned with the topics specifically in ELA, but also trying to address some of the social studies and science themes as well. FACE has already done this in the past and is continuing to do it this year, but now we will deeply be collaborating with teaching and learning to make sure that the field trips are aligned and that we're able to give a field trip to every student from grades kindergarten to 8th grade.
Before I start on this slide, I do want to add really quickly as well, a piece that we don't currently have in place is that CKLA Amplify offers a research unit at every grade level that we were looking to utilize for summer school, so that students would be engaged in long-term research projects directly tied to Tier 1, so that summer school supports the work that we're doing in Tier 1 during the school year. Additionally, we're providing building leaders with a draft to master schedule so that they can see how these minutes might fall across the day, that it really does fit. Each school has their own unique systems and lunch schedules that will kind of alter how this looks in every building, but we're giving them a template to start with.
Next slide. So as we've been talking about being goal focused, for goals 2 and 3, they are both about the educators and the leadership. And if you could go to the next slide, we have expanded on, thanks, the breakdown of what the professional development plan could and hopefully will look like. And notice that it is from 2024 through 2029. The agreement was that this would be a 5-year implementation plan. So this will be very in-depth and hearty by those 5 years as we look forward to it. There's several bullet points in each area. I would like to just point out a couple of things. The first and second year teachers, along with long-term substitutes, are all going to be included with that support yearly. For all staff, there's going to be intentional institute days, monthly district-wide PLC supports, on-site supports, and the use of the late starts and early release times for each building as well. Very comprehensive there. And lastly, the building-based teams of experts, which include your principals, your assistant principals, and coaches. There's some very intentional plans there, noting mostly that the monthly support visits around that data, collaborating and problem solving, and visits to support what's going on in the classrooms.
What we really wanted to highlight with this snapshot is the intentional planning of an implementation plan. This is the how that we speak to. So we have a back-of-house nucleus of tabs that say preschool, K through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12, in which all of them have very detailed plans and how they align to those 3 goals that we've been speaking of, and how we stay on top of it every month to show what we are continuing to work on, what has been completed, and what is continuously being worked on. I said that already.
And finally tonight, we wanted to share with you our plans to also provide common classroom visit tools to all elementary schools. So past practice has been that we kind of develop them in-house, but we know that if we're looking for guaranteed and viable curriculum across the district, we want to be united in the things that we're looking for, providing teachers and leaders with a checklist to rubric for initial implementation all the way through full implementation of the Tier 1 curriculum. And that brings us to time for questions.
First of all, I just want to state that as supporting the committee in the ways that I was able to, I want to say that this team has done a fabulous job. Participating in the meetings was handled very well. Everyone was heard. No ideas were shot down. It was very collaborative. It was just a very great experience. So, Ms. Crowell, I think you did an amazing job facilitating those. So I wanted to give you the kudos for that. I do have a couple of pieces just I want to make sure we clarify for the community. So when we say it's a 5-year implementation plan, it's not to say we're only using this for 5 years. We're going to reassess at the 5-year mark, and if it's working and we're keeping it.
That's right, exactly that. And every single year, there's data that we're going to be looking at that we'll report on as a part of that implementation plan. And it's a minimum of 5 years when we
Yes.
look at it, which doesn't mean that it would go. It's just, here's what we're looking at. We're giving a holistic review and analysis of this. And let's bring it back to the community again. What are we seeing? What are we noticing? What do we need?
Beautiful. And a couple more pieces. And then when we say that it's our first fully bilingual, it's not just translated texts. It is pure Spanish literature that our students are going to be able to access, not just English translated into Spanish.
That's right.
Beautiful.
Yes, correct.
What I really like too is the monthly PLCs or professional learning communities that we're doing, so that everyone can feel supportive and get their get their questions answered. And I believe there was talk about a communal fact sheet of questions, so that that's circulated so that everybody can have access in case someone in your building didn't ask that question. You still have access to the information. And then I just have two more pieces and I'll be quiet for a while. So with the research aspect, I'm hoping I misunderstood. Is that just going to happen in summer school, or it's going to be extended for a second opportunity during summer school?
Yeah, so there's ongoing projects and research embedded in the units during the year, but there are additional research inquiry-based units provided for summer school, which is a unique feature of Amplify.
I might send my kids to summer school just for that. I'm not, I'm not gonna lie. And one more thing I want to say about this is that I hope we're connecting with our HR department, because this is a great aspect to sell to come and work here in Waukegan. Not only do we have a great new contract, which it's great, I wish it was more, but it's great. But it's also giving teachers resources on how to teach reading, which is something that we don't get in school right now. I get Illinois is catching up to the game to try to get that implemented in teaching colleges and in the curriculum for those aspiring to be in the classroom one day. But Waukegan is going to actually provide that training on site. So hopefully we're promoting that out there as well to draw more talent into our district.
Yeah, thank you for all that.
I'm glad that you pointed out the authenticity, because we have had bilingual curriculum in the past, and that's what it was. It was just pure translation. So it sounds like this is more culturally relevant, more authentic. So thank you for that. But I do want to make sure also that we're not just looking at bilingual education, but also our diverse learners. And are there components of this that also provide structures for our diverse learners?
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, we can even speak to it in depth. We have Erin and we have Karen here from Amplify. So if we have any explicit, questions and you would like to speak to, please feel the need. Please come on up. But yes, absolutely, it's pretty explicit, the differentiation and the accommodations that are suggested within units, within daily lessons. I mean, down to the bridge for language. So it is that scaffold that you speak of, Ms. Lensing. And so it's nice because it's there for us. So it's really a springboard of what we continue to build off of. And it's that common language and common understanding that Pam spoke of, is making it guaranteed and having us lean into same conversations within the same time across all schools is really powerful for our students.
Thank you. And then I just want to also clarify, I love the pacing guide. As a teacher, like, you always want to have your year planned out ahead of time. But I want to make sure that we're not so rigid and that there is room for flexibility. Things happen, fire drill, whatever. You have a snow day, whatever. But our teachers, being told that there is some flexibility. Sometimes your class may not just get that unit and you might have to spend some extra time. So I just want to make sure that that's clear as well,
Yeah.
that there's some built-in flexibility on that pacing guide.
Yeah, that's a great comment and it's very real and very true. What we know to be true is there's about 190 days of lessons within Amplify. We have about 178 days here in our district. And then we're buffering in about 20. So we have assessments, we have field trips that Quinn was speaking of. And so we wanted to make it feel breathable, to your point, and attainable, so that we can make it viable. That means that we can get through what we say we're going to get through to guarantee that every student receives that. So that's the way we have to make it viable. It has to be something that we can genuinely get through, and there needs to be a little bit of breathing room within that. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And it's still going to feel a little tight, and it's when it's new, it's going to feel tight. Yeah, it's going to feel tight.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely.
I just want to make sure that teachers don't feel like, oh my goodness, if they're coming in with this tool to observe
Yes,
me.
that is most definitely what we do
I'm
now.
on day
Yeah.
11, but I should be on day 13. I'm not getting knocked down for that. So that's
No.
why I just want to make sure that we
Yeah.
clarify that there is some flexibility, because we know
For sure.
it's never perfect.
Yeah, the coaching would more be, it's been 2 months.
Right.
Right, it's been 2 months. Let's
Yes,
talk about it.
Exactly. And then the other question is, and it sounds kind of like Ms. Ambrosio talked about this, is resource alignment, but also talking to ensuring that we're not duplicating efforts. So this sounds like everybody's kind of on the same page, that we're not duplicating purchasing the same resources because different departments are ordering the same thing.
That's right.
So I'm hoping that that's
Yes,
all part of that
all-
resource alignment.
Yes.
And then a couple more questions. I know there's a lot. Homeschool Connection, are there, does this curriculum provide for that specific homeschool connection? I know the literacy plan gives you that whole layout of the components of reading, but is that all also embedded in there?
Yes, yeah.
It is embedded, and I know that they can speak to the number of languages. However, those homeschool connections are provided in how many? I've seen many, at least 15 languages on the website. Okay.
Can she speak in
Yeah,
the
can we
mic?
get a mic?
Because the people at home
Yeah.
can't hear you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's homeschool letters that are included within the curriculum in both knowledge and skills. There's also a website in both Spanish and English for homeschool connections. I think teachers really love to see those kinds of things happening. There's also the ability for the student hub. If students do have access to the internet, they can get on the internet and use the materials at home. So we've tried to make it as accessible as possible with those connections through the activity books that are physical or digital, depending on access.
So one last piece I wanted to say about that was that we're also, the Family and Community Engagement Department will also be going out into the community and holding Facebook Live events to really talk about what the science of reading is and to also share what we're doing. So we want to make sure that, this, as you saw, the town hall meetings involving board members, this was really, a grassroots effort in order to get as much input as possible before moving forward. And with that said, we also want to make sure it's clear to everyone in the community as well. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. This is what it connects to. And when you hear this term science of reading, this is what it means. This is what it means for you. This is what it means for your child or your children, and how you can support it in your role as a parent or a community member or a grandparent or whomever, whatever stakeholder role, right? So I just wanted to add that in as well.
And the fact that it's going to stay, because those of us who've taught in Waukegan know that curriculum has changed often. So I'm really liking that we're committed to sticking to this.
Well, you had asked a question about the curriculum mapping, and that had been completed.
Yeah.
And there was some curriculum writing as well to fill in some of the gaps. And some of that work is still going to continue as well in terms of how we're supporting and supplementing in order to make sure that we have culturally relevant materials and experiences for students. So that this has been many years
in the making.
In the making, yeah.
And then
It's a process.
just a couple more questions, and then I'll hand it over to Mr. Riddle. Two, I see there's a lot of, and I love that it's integrated with science and social studies. Are Encore teachers also going to be receiving the training so that Encore teachers can also align projects? And then the last question is, for those that are late hires and don't make it to Great Beginnings, will there be kind of catch-up sessions for those teachers as well?
Yes and yes. There is a Makeup Great Beginnings that happens typically in November, and so that would be a piece of that. And then, yes, our Encore teachers will be welcome to participate in PLCs and every month. And they'll be training ongoing within their buildings.
Thank you. Mr. Riddle and then Mr. Shington.
Okay. Just to be clear, and I just want to, kind of paint a broad picture here. We've been teaching reading for years. But what we're doing now, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we're going to a reading process to teach reading that's science-based, and studies have been looked at. It's called the science of reading. We've been teaching reading for years, but this is a better way to teach reading, and Amplify has a program or curriculum that we can use to do this, right? We've chosen them as our leads on this, correct?
Yes, that's
And
correct.
we've been using Amplify for a number of years, right? But
That's
just
correct.
not completely district-wide. Is that correct?
It's been district-wide for our elementary schools for
Okay.
primary grades.
Okay.
And for phonics for the last few years, and we've used Amplify on the assessment side of things, on
Okay.
how we progress monitor. And I just want to say this, I think that this is helpful, especially if the shift that you speak of, Mr. Riddle, is where we've been over the past, I would say maybe 5 to 10 years, is we teach reading through a level of the alphabet. So for example, if I'm in 3rd grade, perhaps I might be should be at letter N. So they say on this chart. But like I'm at letter D, right? Just 'cause I am. And so what teachers have done and what we've done in our practices, and it's no shame, I want to say it, it's just what we did. It's just the shift that is happening. It's where we were. Is we were teaching to the letter that they were reading at, and we weren't exposing them to grade level, higher level texts, because the brain and research is saying they can do it if they're exposed to it. So if we spend time not exposing them to it, we're going to waste time not meeting them and modeling and providing read alouds at their grade level. And so the shift itself is, part of the shift is that we teach at those grade level, those lexile levels. And we provide the scaffolds, we provide the support, we provide the small group that they need. And it's like, if you build it, they will come. They can do it.
Right.
And so that's the shift, because all brains can read, all kids can read, and those are those practices that Ms. Lensing speak of, and is speaking of, is it's laid out for us as educators, and we can follow that roadmap of what research is saying. The knowledge building piece is that if kids are reading multiple texts throughout a unit of study, which may last over 8 weeks, all on same concepts and themes, that they're going to learn more about more under the same umbrella of these themes and these ideas and these topics. Therefore, when they know more about something, much like all of us, they can speak about it, they can have conversations, they can question about it, they can go back into the text. Then, when they can speak about it, they can converse about it, and they know and they feel confident, they can write about it. Ultimately, the highest form of showing what you know. And so where we've been in the past is explicitly around standards in isolation. Summarize, read about rainbows, summarize. Read about the War of 1812, summarize. Read about this and how you do, and make a peanut butter sandwich, and summarize. All different topics. And so what they're saying is this knowledge building piece is they're creating all of these texts and resources for us that build year after year on top, all the way up to middle school. So when they know all these things and they've learned about it intentionally, that now as middle school, 6th through 12th grade, I can teach the discipline that I went to school for history, for science, because they know these things. I know guaranteed they've known these things or they've been exposed to these things.
Right, right. And how big of a shift is this for some of our teachers? And especially the ones that are teaching the small children, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, because by 3rd grade, they're supposed to be able, but we know a lot of kids are not reading at grade level. Are we going to, is our hope that by 3rd grade, in 3 to 5 years, we're going to have most of our students reading at grade level?
I think Pam can say this best, as she does.
Yes, so I would say that the first shift that we've made is explicit systematic phonics, right? Understanding that foundational skills has to be present. For our youngest teachers in K2, the big shift is going to be understanding that listening comprehension always precedes reading comprehension. If you want strong readers in 3rd through 5th grade, you have to have high quality read alouds in K2. So when you go in the knowledge unit and you walk in their classroom, then you should see them with engaging read-alouds. So we have historically thought that if kids have a book in their hands, they're doing more learning and reading. That's not entirely accurate all the time. So in K2, we're using listening comprehension to build knowledge. And when I've heard those words and I understand that vocabulary, now in 3rd grade when I go to read it myself, I can connect that to what I know, right? So, and to Ms. Rice de los Sanchez's point, reading comprehension is heavily dependent on the knowledge I bring to the text. So if we aren't embedding knowledge in K2 for our students, we should not expect them to read at grade level in 3rd grade because those skills are not transferable across concepts.
Okay.
Right?
Can you tell me what a read aloud is? Is that when the teacher's reading the books and
Yes.
the material? Okay.
Yep,
So
so-
so they're understanding and hearing, and now they're hearing these words and they're understanding what's being spoken to them. Now they can read that as well. Begin to read it. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. So they'll learn to read in the skills block, in the phonics block, right?
Okay.
And we'll use decodable text that is controlled around the phonics patterns they're learning. In the knowledge side, we are no longer bound by a lexile in K2. We can read texts that are much more advanced, giving kids access to complex language and structures,
Right.
which will also support our diverse learners as they grow, and our English language learners as they are working to gain language acquisition.
Okay, makes a lot of sense because, years ago I remember reading that kids who are exposed, to many, many words and concepts, they are far ahead of the children who have not been exposed, so that, that have not learned and stuff. So you're really bringing that forward. So there's a whole mass of things that's in the science of reading. It's not just one thing, phonics. It's not just knowledge base. It's a whole bunch of things. And it's a shift for our educators as well. So it's going to take a while to transition to this, right?
Yes, it's all 7 of those components
Right.
that you saw earlier.
Wonderful,
so.
wonderful. Well, I'm glad that we've made this switch, and I'm really pleased that, and certainly I think I can't speak for all the board, but I certainly support what you're doing here, and and I know Miss Hannah would because she's been after this for a long time, and it's equity as well. It's all of our kids need to be able to read because they have a right to knowledge, and it sounds like you're bringing that to our children in Waukegan. So thank you so much for this effort that you've made. Thank you.
Mr. Shington.
So I've been coming here for, say, 25 years plus, even before most of you guys have been around. Now, this is no disrespect, but the school board has gone from one curriculum to the next, okay? That curriculum that she was speaking of read about the war in 1812 and summarize, you guys passed. So, not to beat a dead horse, so you're going to approve something, a 5 to a 7-year plan. What happens if you don't get the results you're looking for in, say, 7 years? Is it move on to the next? There's always fill in with gaps where things are missing, but I've watched for 20 plus years of this going on, and we're like stuck in the mud. We're still at the same spot we were.
So I just want to be very clear that the 5 to 7 year implementation is really, we're looking at it as a whole. How effective is this going to be? We should have some really valuable results at that time. It doesn't mean we won't make adjustments during that time. I just want to be really clear about that. And then Pam said something, and it's something that I say very often. I said we're moving from a checklist to a rubric. Really establishing a common understanding of what we need to be successful. What are the characteristics? What's the environment like? And making sure that we're progress monitoring that. So once we reach that level, we can move to a rubric. What is this supposed to look like? What are these read alouds supposed to look like within the sequence of a lesson? right? When does it come in? What strategies am I using? So it's going to take us some time. And I think Ms. Lensing touched on something that's very important, that teaching reading explicitly has not been a part. I think this is my 28th year in education, and it was not something that I was taught explicitly, right? And I did not learn in this manner. I learned whole language, and I taught balanced literacy when I was a teacher. So it is a huge shift. And it's a very valid point. I don't want to belabor this point,
the
but
question
if I may, thank you. We have to adapt to what the research is telling us. And over time, there's a body of evidence that shows us that this methodology is much more fair and equitable to all learners. And so I think when something like that happens, we can't ignore it, especially in the field of education. So I thought it was really important to respond to those points, that this is something that's been very intentional. It's been years in the making. It hasn't been, well, the state's going to it, we're going to it. Dr. Kevin Brown brought it up. We were talking about it when we adopted CKLA. Ms. Hannah has been a huge part of this for years. And the team here has been researching it and implementing and looking at how do we do this systemically. So it has been quite a concerted effort from, again, I would say within our team, across the community, in partnership with the board, to really bring this to fruition.
I just wanted to add on to that because I taught reading and language comprehension for 10 years. It was a one-on-one setting, so it's not something that we're going to expect our teachers to be able to replicate with what I was able to do with students. Aspects of this curriculum are in line with that. You have to develop phonemic awareness, which most of our students have. It's just the ability to understand the difference of sounds.
You don't have to sell me. I understand.
So to answer your point,
I don't think you're.
I know what
don't
he's
think a lot of people are getting. So I'll put my analogy somewhere else. The city has tons of graffiti. Paint doesn't solve graffiti. It masks it.
Right.
If you don't, and just keep putting paint doesn't solve the problem. Now, obviously, it's a good program. We've had a lot of good programs. We keep recycling through. What I'm asking is, after we've run this for a course, we have a rubric. If you don't score to that rubric, what are we going to do with this cohort of students that still doesn't make, we're going to start this kindergarten. In 5 years, these fifth graders, what are we going to do with these group that still are reading at, say, a third grade level? We can't continue to,
and I think you, and the only reason I'm jumping in because it builds on the questions that I have, and I'll do that briefly. And I do want to do a time check. We are at 6:48, but it was around this being not a silver bullet, but a tool. Sometimes when we talk about curriculum as if by changing the curriculum, that will magically solve all of the problems. And what I have is, it's not a silver bullet, but a tool and a resource. And so you still have to work with those educators to understand the tool. You still have to progress monitor, not once a year, but what are you doing throughout the year? And when students aren't meeting those benchmarks, how are you addressing those needs, right? Those are two kind of, in my opinion, separate issues. And what Mr. Shinkton is saying, while they may be separate issues because we're talking about this right now, is we want to be thinking about that. Because to his point, when I first got on the board, what I heard all the time was, well, we just keep changing the curriculum. So we may, and I know we got the 5 years, but that's what it was. We have it for 2 years, we have it for 3 years. Somebody says something is better, or it's not working, or we're not seeing the results. We throw it out, and we don't necessarily address some of the systemic things. It's because you can have a great curriculum if we're not hiring teachers until after November, which was one of the questions that came up. How are they getting that intentional things? If we are still have over 100 vacancies, right? Mr. Sabecki, not to call, but that's something that he talks about. What does the curriculum matter? So again, I think we're talking about the tool. It's a good tool. That's what we're talking about this evening. And then further than that, how do we continue to address the systemic issues that continue to be a hindrance, right? So I understand completely what you're saying. I just think this issue is, hey, if we believe that this is a good curriculum that'll help with reading, let's go ahead and advance and move that forward. And then let's also keep in mind and be very explicit, is just addressing the curriculum without addressing the rest of everything else is not going to give us the results that we want. And I've had Mr. McBride, who's been waiting, and then I see you, Ms. Fabian. Go, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Shinkton, I'm one of them pioneers you're talking about. I've watched the curricula change 1,000 different times, and when they was doing it, all I was saying, we wasted money. We right back where we started all over again. And your analogy about graffiti, I was the person that was removing the graffiti all over Waukegan. You're right. All I was doing was painting over. The next day I'd paint over and paint over. And guess what? I done retired. Guess what? They still doing the same thing. So I don't. There's no solution for that. I guess maybe once you eliminate gangs, then you eliminate that, because that's who's putting the graffiti up is gangs.
And you know how you do that? Focusing on reading.
I
apologize. But go ahead, Ms. Fabian, and I'm hoping, unless there's anybody else. Oh, I'm sorry,
No,
you weren't done, Ms.
Yeah, I just
Okay.
wanted to address what you're saying. So I understand what you're saying, and again, the few that you're talking about being left behind, it seems to me they're going to always be left behind. Brandon wasn't left behind. The young lady that's over Equity now, she wasn't left behind, but there are those that went to school with y'all got left behind. And they were in the same classroom that you were in. And I think a lot of reasons, because when I was working at the school as a security person, we had SSI. You know who those was? Those were the smart kids. They had a different curriculum. Guess what? We still got that today. Magnum schools. So we know that our kids can learn, but I think the environment and who's in front of them makes a difference. And I say that because we just had a Blue Ribbon School, right?
A couple of years ago, yes.
And what school is that?
McCall.
Is that an elementary?
Yes.
What's the difference between that and Carmen? It's who's in front of them and who's presenting what's in front of them. And as you were speaking about thinking outside the box, Jennifer, guess who does it right now? Whittier. The lady came up in here, and what you guys, the program you guys sharing with me now, she came in and shared that program, but it was called something different. But guess what? It is working. So I am saying that the bottom line to it is it depends on who you got in front of you and who's delivering the message and what the message is, where it's coming from, what determines how well you're going to learn. And that's all I have to say to that. But you are right, because I don't watch curriculum change. I think this is my 4th time on the board, and I don't watch it change. Seem like every year, different curriculum, and guess what? The game don't change, just the faces. The game still remains the same.
So, Ms. Lensing, if you would like to finish, and then I'll go to Ms. Fabian for the final word.
So the last meeting we had, I had suggested summer reading camp. So these students that we're saying are being left behind and they're in 5th grade and they're not reading at 5th grade level, once our teachers know how to use the curriculum, my request was to have a specific reading camp for the summer, not focusing on all of the grades or all of the subjects, but targeted instruction to get them up to pace. It's science, it works, it is differentiated. And in terms of the graffiti analogy, if we gave people the space to practice and use it in a constructive way, it wouldn't be a problem. So if we have reading camps in the summer to support those that are behind, we can catch everybody up. It's about using what we have available and using our time wisely to get these kids what they need.
We've had those camps too.
Go ahead, Ms. Fabian.
To Mr. Riddle's point is how big of a shift this is, and to Mr. Shinkton's point is you said a word, we recycle often. So how big of a shift it is depends on how long you've been teaching and what you've been teaching and what program you went to. Because we do have teachers here that we called it background knowledge, is what, you know, they're talking about, implementing all of that higher level vocabulary first. We taught phonics. We taught to the top 25% because at one point our dual language was taught a specific program that you did teach to the higher end and you did not teach to the Lexile level. So some of these things are, to your point, being recycled, but I think what it is we're taking all the best pieces of those, packaging them together to then have this curriculum. And I will tell you, as a teacher, when you get rid of a curriculum, it takes you, first of all, a year to go through it to even figure out how to best implement it, to learn it yourself, right? So you can't even see if it truly works because you're not even implementing it correctly. And then to really get the pace and cadence, all of that takes time. So to say after 2 years that it doesn't work, let's throw it out, that's not logical. It's not. But for them to go in and evaluate and assess and try to add those supports and resources to ensure that things are running smoothly, I agree with that. But I agree with your point. I've been in the district for 20 years and have seen all of the different curriculums come through and just recycled terminology, or we relabel the terminology. So I think it just depends on the teacher on how big of a shift, a mind shift it's going to be, versus, you know, somebody who's brand new, it might be a total mind shift, right? But I like the fact that we're going to do this as a district and that there's going to be supports so that everybody's on the same page and understands, you know, where they should be, and that if I go from this school to that school, because our kids are highly mobile and transient between our buildings, that they can pick up where they left off. To me, that is the most valuable thing about finally having it all together and packaged nicely.
So,
I have a question, Brandon.
Go ahead.
And then, Mr. Cesario, it's a burden not on the teacher, but it's a burden when you got 30 kids in the classroom. I'm gonna just tell you like it is. Somebody gonna come up short.
Yep, and I think like what you saying, Mr. McBride, is, and what I hear, and we talked about it all the time, and this will be my final comment before we continue with the agenda, is many of our students, for no fault of their own, do start behind the 8 ball, right? We literally tested the students at the beginning of the year, and we saw that our students, when entering preschool, were behind where their peers were. And so what we have to do is continue to provide those resources, continue to be there, because we want to be a district in which students aren't left behind, or they have opportunities when they may not get it to have extended day, extended year, those reading camps that Ms. Lensing talked about, in order to make sure that we are providing the supports, so we don't continue to have the same conversation of this is just the way it is. I believe that we have to be more progressive in our ideology and our thought process to make sure that we do not have a society where, like you said, reading is a fundamental right. We want a literate society. I think there are forces that don't want us literate, and I think we, as a people and a populace, have every reason that we need to make sure that we can read. And so this is a moral obligation, and I'm speaking for Ms. Hannah, who would be here with her righteous indignation if she was able, but it's not just a moral obligation, but it's one that we need for our community. So I appreciate all the thoughts and the comments. I appreciate the thought that was put into it, and for the vendors who are here to represent their product as well. We always, as a board, appreciate when you are offering us a resource or selling us a resource that we pay a lot of money for, that you come before to answer the questions that we do have. So we do appreciate that. Thank you. Next up, information items. We will take these one at a time. If you as a community member have a question, or you as a board member, please raise your hand. The information has been provided there. And again, so there won't be further presentations, but I do want to give an opportunity if you have a question. So item 5A, renewal of iQuest science materials for 6th through 8th grade. Item B, purchase of 150 Dell Chromebooks for the one-to-one student program. C, renewal of school mint licenses for 2024-2025 school year. D, Waukegan High School Diverse Learners Teacher Professional Development. I know there were questions from and I'm sorry, Miss Fabian, are you okay with me stating them publicly?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just continue to go with when these items are coming forward that the paperwork is completed correctly and accurately. I know that's been a request of both Ms. Fabian and Ms. Lensing multiple times, so we are making that request again. I know it's typically fixed before it comes up for action, but we like to see it in the recommendations as attachments. So to her point, if there's going to be a monetary cost, the board is aware. G, Waukegan High School new course proposal, introduction to guitar.
Just glad to see that we're doing that, as well as item H, percussion ensemble. I think that's wonderful additions to our curriculum. So thank you, music department and Ms. Massimo.
We didn't, I don't
Go up.
think we had a question. E and F, he's talking about.
Go up.
Did we go over it?
No.
Okay, sorry. I thought we were.
We're just stating that if for any professional development, that you have all the
No, I got
paperwork
that.
in there. And
What
that's-
about G? I'm sorry to interrupt. G,
No, you're
thought
fine.
you went to G. Were you on G?
I did. I skipped it. So they scrolled down. So if we're going back to E, student outreach, professional development request, was anybody had a question on student outreach?
I think my question was the same for all professional development.
Okay.
And then F,
I did
renewal.
have a question,
And then-
though, Brandon. What are the Chromebooks, your 150 Chromebooks, what is that for?
Extras for kids.
So that's to accommodate those students that are new to the district. So we had about 170 students that came into that transferred into the district.
From where?
Just they transferred in. I don't know exactly where from, but they've transferred in from other school districts. So we have some
over the year
newcomers.
At one time or periodically?
Periodically, yeah. Not en masse. No, not all at one time. No.
I just had a question about, if we're going back to G, the guitar, is if we're doing introduction to guitar, which I love because that's very culturally responsive. I was looking at the curriculum, but just making sure that if it's successful, we have plans to grow it so they don't stay on the, just strumming.
100%, and also based on student interest and moving from there. But
That's
yeah,
all I wanted to
absolutely
make sure that we have.
starting with that.
We have a plan to grow it.
Ms. Lindsay?
Sorry, we're just going to play jump around tonight. Just for the student outreach, I just wanted to say that I think the department is doing a great job at going at lengths to make sure that our students aren't leaving the district unless it's of importance to that individual student first, and then to the surrounding students and staff. So I just wanted to give kudos to the department because I think they're doing a great job. I've been part of some board reprimands, and it's been great seeing the collaboration to get these kids where they need to be.
Thank you, Mr. Dupuy.
Awesome. So we were F. I don't think we have any questions, but I'll stop there. Renewal of frontline professional growth subscription. We did G already. We did H already. I, renewal of no red ink for 6th through 12th grade.
Only question on that, Board President, I did read one or two, I just Googled that no red ink, and I saw that there were some students that were in high school upper level on the internet who thought it was too below them, that it was good for the, middle school, younger kids. When you get to senior level, they thought some of the examples that they gave, and it was just a little bit too below them. That just may have been a few of the students that, were probably upper level seniors and thought this was not needed by their.
Yeah, because I think a misconception could be of high school is that grammar or foundational skills and adverbs and nouns, the practice still needs to be there, so this is a wonderful tool, and
Right.
it's really a part of their CIA plan of how are we implementing this for that.
Right,
those
and I think
students.
grammar is important, yeah, and we can see that. I know you can Google, you can type things and not really know grammar and just use grammar check and.
And it might not be a support for every student, but it is a support for those that need it.
That really
and
need
so I think that it's a valuable tool.
Okay.
Just
Good.
Thank you. Ms. Lindsay, you had a question on that one?
Yeah, so have we had conversations with either staff or students with how they're using it and what the feedback is? And if you can give us like the 3 big takeaways from those conversations?
I can't speak to the feedback. I might be able to touch, Beth might be able to speak to that as a steward of the work. However, what I can say is within our pillar 1 of middle school, but in high school transformation plan, their curriculum instruction assessment, they're really looking at holistically building to building of where is writing happening, where is it not, where does we need to add value to within the writing piece, and then also intentionally within departments, how are we using this resource for what's needed within our units of study. So that's that piece right there, just to kind of say here's how and the implementation of how we're moving forward.
We did look at usage too.
Yeah, and we
Yeah,
did, I
yeah.
put that in
Okay.
there.
Yeah, that's it's.
Go ahead,
well, I
sorry.
think it's a good
Yeah.
data.
Good evening. Attached to the documents is some feedback from some of the teachers that you could see on how they've used it and what they appreciate about the tool.
Good.
Overall, I'd say that I've gotten good feedback from teachers, and it's really like it's a good tool to use to support with writing, and it's there as a support for like Ms. Bryce de la Sanchez said also, for grammar, which isn't really part of the curriculum, isn't really a part of the curriculum. So it's an extra support for that.
Good, good.
Yeah.
So then the spotlights that you included are representative of everyone. These are just the best examples of such? Okay, thank you.
Awesome. All right, we are at J, renewal of Carnegie Learning Textbook and Math Year License for grades 6 through 12.
Good.
K, renewal of Carnegie Learning On-Site Professional Learning for grades 6 through 12.
Right.
L, renewal of Edulastic Assessment System for grades 6 through 12. M, renewal of Laserfish licenses. N, renewal of Infrastructure Learn platform. Ms. Fabian?
So I just wanted to ask if we could highlight what are the EdTech product library? Why doesn't that already have like a platform for capturing the reports? Because this looks like
What the Learn platform does?
Yeah. So it says it maintains the EdTech product library.
So all
So
of the
what's
so one of the things when No Red Ink was mentioned, one of the things that we're doing is auditing, looking at all of these software programs across the district to look at usage and then ask, what are we using these for? What was the intended purpose? What are our outcomes? And what's the usage? So this is something like No Red Ink was one of the pieces that we looked at. So that's the ed tech that we're referring
So
to.
it's because the way that
So
it's written, EdTech looks like
it looks like it's a
actual
company
product
name.
or
It's
a
not the
company.
product.
So
It's
you meant
the
educational technology
Yeah,
within
that's-
the district. So
yes.
this is looking at all of our educational technology pieces.
every and Josue can speak to this
Okay.
too, but every piece that is
Got your back.
used, yeah, but every piece that is used in the district at every school. And so the other piece is we're looking at redundancies. We're looking at, how can we be more efficient with our dollars, but also make sure that these are being used with fidelity for their intended purposes, and they're not. One other piece, especially which is really critical right now as we're moving towards this implementation of our the science of reading, our new literacy plan, is making sure that it's not deviating or contradicting what that is doing, right? So we want to look at this, and it's a process. We look at it every week in the ASAP meeting, and we talk about we talk about an analysis of what we're using, how we're using it, what needs to go. But it is a process because there are so many.
Yeah, no,
But that's what
agree
it
with
is.
that.
So
It's
it's supposed to be
it
ed
looks-
tech, not. I remember now seeing in the question that it was a
looks like
compound
you're-
word,
you're-
and it's not. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. It should be. So
Just
yeah.
wanted to clarify.
Yep. No, that's what it is. Thanks.
Anything you want to add, Dr. Cuevas? Okay, cool. We're good.
Awesome. So we're now at our request. No, Q. Nope.
Yeah.
Sorry. Tyler Connect conference approval.
Same questions.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, I'm sorry, just to be another advocate for Ms. Hannah, I understand this is a student achievement and operations meeting, but there was a previous request to include in this whether it's budgeted and where the funds are coming from, even in these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leslie. P, purchase of pre-K through 12 school
But
supply kits.
in the,
And I think we talked about that one. There's unless they put it in the narrative, there's not a way with the way that
Way it's
Board Docs
formatted.
does it that
Right.
they have it as a budgeted item.
Yeah, but we could put it in the.
And it may a lot of times I think it, and I don't know for this for sure, but sometimes also if we look, it has the cost. But when we look at the attachments, let's just make sure from a consistency because some of them have it, some of them doesn't.
Yeah.
But that it says budgeted on the when they have the PowerPoint slide. Thank you. Now we're at Q, approval for reimbursement for speech and language pathology.
Can we go back to P?
P, purchase of pre-K through 12 school supply kits.
I had a lot of questions on this one, so bear with me. Because on the slides, it looked like these materials were enough to support 30% of our student population, and it said that they were going to be given out at the Back to School Resource Fair, and I know that 30% of our population does not attend the Resource Fair. So this was something that was purchased last year as well. So did we inventory, make sure that all of those items were out and utilized? 1, 2, with what's left over, do we have a plan to how to get it out equitably so that those students that really truly need supplies are receiving the supplies? And then 3, last year they were also purchased as kits, but then the kits were undone and then repackaged. So I know for purchasing sake, it's a lot cheaper to buy a product in bulk and then package it ourselves than buy it pre-packaged and then unpackage it to repackage it. So those were my concerns.
Good evening, everyone. Regarding the backpacks that are left over, so we definitely inventory them afterwards, and they're then redistributed to schools based on need. And the FACE team will continue that practice this year. And regarding the kits, so they were not repackaged, they were opened up to fit in the backpack so that they're lighter for everyone to carry and easily movable, right? So we package them one place and then we take them to the location. It is the most cost efficient just because we get everything we need in the kit, and then we get it all at the right time when we need it. So I think the logistics there is really important, which is why we go with this vendor. And then did I cover everything? Was there one thing that I missed?
No, like that's what I really wanted
Okay.
to make sure
Okay.
that we have inventoried and that we have a plan for distribution.
Yeah.
Miss Lindsay.
Oh, I think Miss Norman want to add.
Just for this year, after the resource fair, we did give all of the book bags away to schools. So in our schools, so those book bags were given out to Waukegan students. That there's only 3 left in the building.
I just want to I want to add something to that. Just to be transparent, I know of 2 or 3 Waukegan agencies that you also supported that have our kids come in for after school that wasn't able to receive the bags. So I just wanted to just add that. You kind of missed that, but anyway, kudos to you. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Miss Lindsay.
So this is just a plug for you guys. You're going to need support packing those backpacks because I've had the years where I purchased my school supplies. Our school now supplies it for the students based on their site-based budgeting. But do you have a date in mind or a general time frame in which volunteers can anticipate the request to call to action to help pack those bags?
Yes, we are one step ahead of you. Last year, I gave the team a goal of packing everything in 3 days, and I believe we did it in 2, thanks to our volunteers. So this year we're shooting for 2 days. So we're in the process with our IT department of creating kind of a commercial, a video. So that will include the sign up. You know, we're going to get everybody excited. You know, it's time again. We're going to do it big again. So we're definitely, that information will come.
I love it. Did you want to add more, Miss Norman?
But if you're looking for a general time, keep your calendar open near the end of June.
End of June. And I will say the resource fair was a bunch of fun. I was out by the bounce houses with the kids just cheering them on. It was a blast. We had a lot of performances, everything. So prepare to volunteer and prepare to show up for the event, I would say.
Yes, thank you. And we will be also recruiting more sponsors this year because we want to continue to make it a big event.
Love it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are now at Q, approval for the reimbursement for speech and language pathologists, virtual attendance at the Meaningful Speech course for professionals. R, requesting board approval for purchase of additional touch math materials for low incidence and DL students.
I just want to say kudos to who's bringing some more touch math. I've used it in the classroom, and it is so helpful, not just for DL students, but general ed students. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Fabian. S, renewal of Partners for Results contract.
I did have one question on this one.
Go ahead.
Because I couldn't see the whole contract. And does that contract include for our long-term subs or our regular subs to be able to enter so that they can also plan?
The long-term subs, yes. The regular subs, I'm not aware. I don't think it's not the day-to-day subs, no.
Okay.
Long-term subs, yes.
Okay.
Day-to-day, no. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, T, MS Middle School AMLE Leadership Conference. Mr. Sabecki.
Clarence.
Yeah.
I don't think
Nah.
it's on. He's playing with
that
it.
green?
Is it green? Yeah, now it's on.
Now it's on.
Now it's on. So I have a couple questions on this one. So we're going to send 42 people out of district to San Diego for $135,000. Did we ever look at about bringing someone in the district for that many people? It'd be a lot cheaper to bring somebody in the district for 42 people to send out to California, is my first question. Second question, is there a virtual option to any of these conferences? Because I see coming up there is a virtual option on V to a lot of these conferences that we're going on. Because we keep sending a lot of people out of the district for these conferences, but yet year after year, we keep saying it's for the kids and that, year after year, the scores are staying the same, or barely moving. So we're spending a lot of money to keep sending people out all over the country to all these conferences. And then my third question is, looking at some of the people going on these conferences, it's their second, third, fourth conference this year going on. What's the maximum of these same people going on the conferences? Because that's not fair to all the rest of the staff in our district when it's the same people going on the same multiple conferences every year.
Okay. Good afternoon, Superintendent and Board. This AMLE conference, it is not a virtual conference. It is a live conference where they will go. One of the things that the middle school has been doing, because of the state designation, we've been working with the state representative and coordinator. For this, most of this is through their funds that they are giving. They know that the principal leadership cannot lift the school alone. So this year, the ILTs have been going through a study of learning by doing, and this is to advance the teams. It's very important that these teams come along beside the principals because they are the ones that are actually lifting the work. We did ask that some of the principals that had been stay back before, that have been, and we wanted to send the AP, but if you'll see, most of these are teacher leadership. 30 is only 8 administrators going, but the bulk of all of this is teacher leadership. We're developing them so that they can take this initiative to get our school designation changed for all the middle schools.
Ms. Fabian.
To Mr. Sabecki's point, thank you for sending a lot of the teachers and the teachers leadership, but when we're looking at the admin, there were some that had already been out for several days this school year, and I think that's the concern, right? So if we have an admin that's out 12 days and is requesting 4 more for professional development, and they've already gone in the past, or even if they haven't, but they have their team going, does that admin really need to go, or can their team bring that information back to them? Because that's a whole lot of time out for being on conferences.
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I can answer that.
During this
Yeah,
summer.
this is during the summer.
Yes.
And I didn't look through the names thoroughly, so I don't know who the 8 is. But if we state as a board, the principal is a lover of change, I do agree with you, Mr. Bear, if they went before the AP, but if the principal hasn't been, in order to lead the initiative, they have to have the workings and the foundation of the initiative to actually help with the lift, right? So I have not looked at those names specifically on who had previously went, but I'm sure that Mr. Berry has gone through the names to ensure that if a principal went, does understand the framework that they will be utilizing, is now giving the opportunity for the assistant principal to attend. Also, when you see school learning communities working together, and I'll use the example as IB because that came up today, you see that the principal, his instructional coach, is the lead of that. So our principals are not just building managers or instructional leaders, that we expect them to be grounded in the work, roll up their sleeves, be in classrooms, be in those ILT meetings to facilitate those conversations, whether it's around data, practice, etc. But I'm going to state again, I've not looked at specifically those 8 names. It's not just ringing a bell right now.
And
but please look at that, Mr. Berry.
Yeah, and one of them is a new leader to the building. She's been before, but this is her first time working with her team, so she did request to go with the team as a new development. Yes.
And then I think that your question still wasn't answered as far as, is there an opportunity for somebody to come to the district versus sending them out?
At this conference, there are going to be several sessions that the teams can engage in, and there is no way that one person can come and give the amount of learning. When we've been on the conference before, we always divide out and say who's going to which section, so that you can bring back the information. So there are multiple sessions throughout this weekend, and there's no way a person can come in and do the full conference here.
Ms. Linzing, and then I'll come back to you, Ms.
So I have 2 questions. So this slide, when looking at the attachments, does have the source, but you had said that due to the designations, how much of this $135,000 is going to be paid for not out of our funds, but from the state?
Some of them, most of the schools are getting ESSER funds to support this initiative. And one of the things that the state really will sponsor is professional development. They have requested that we get this professional development for our staff.
So how much then of the 135 is from that?
I can double
Okay.
check.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Make sure we'll have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the additional question I had is that I'm a fan of the divide and conquer. I think that's the best use of our time. So what's the plan, because that's not included here, to provide them the space to give a debrief to everyone? I wouldn't anticipate it's all going to happen at the conference.
No, typically when we've been there, we've had a debrief session every day of the conference. But then when we come back, we also look and make sure that the team, we have monthly meetings with the middle school. This is a part of our plan to support their learning and growth. So we not only meet with the principals, but we're meeting with teaching and learning, the coordinators once a month. We're doing a full wraparound support for our middle school because of our state designation.
So then every representative is going to be involved in those meetings that went here so that they can absorb the information and disseminate that within their building.
Yes. And also, like I said, we have a monthly meeting to conduct those as well.
Mr. Berry, I just want to clarify, and Dr. Cesario, hoped you catch that last question because I got the tail end of it, but not the beginning of it. So just want to state that, Ms. Lindsay's question. But what I do know that the state meets monthly with yourself, the school principal itself. So I did hear you state this, and I just want to put clarity around this. The state is recommending this. Is that what you're stating?
Yes, they are recommending that we train our leadership teams. Yes.
Question, Brandon, when you get a chance.
The conference specifically.
They didn't say this particular conference. They give you leeway. As you'll see later on, we have a learning partner coming up that we want to renew for Miguel Juarez. They give us the flexibility, but every month I sit with the principal and the state coordinator, and we go through the steps that we've done each month. So we have to report back what we've done monthly.
And then to clarify, it's ESSA funds, not ESSER funds. correct?
Yeah, and here was PSSA.
Yeah.
Got it. Mr. Sabeki.
All right, so I have one more question. All right, I understand it's a leadership conference, but when they come back to the schools, who are they leading? Because if we don't figure out the teacher problem in our buildings, and there's a different substitute or long-term sub every other day, to me it's a waste of money, because who you giving that leadership to when it's a different person every single day? It's not fair to the students. We're sending these people to train them, but who are they training if you got a different person every single day? And this year, I'll point out right now, my son has at least 2 long-term subs and one teacher that's different almost every single period. So what leadership are you going to be given if we can't even figure out the staffing problem?
I think it's not a one size fits all, but we definitely cannot stop working in this area where we know we need some development. This has been something that we've been working on for about 5 years now. We have some different players there, but I do think it's important to note that the state has come in and working with the state, and also having our own structure to support our leaders, our building leaders, our principals. I think that it's going to take not only the work that we're doing on our side in terms of teaching and learning, but also working with HR in order to ensure that we're recruiting teachers and working to do that. It's not going to fix the problem that you just described. You're absolutely right. However, it does show that we are making an effort, and I also go to the fact that it's a recruiting tool in terms of, there's professional development that's offered, there's concerted effort on the part of the administration, along with the teacher leaders in each of those buildings, to move forward and build and learn together. So whereas it's not explicitly addressing the teacher shortage, it is an effort to work on areas of needed growth within each of those buildings.
So, final question on this topic, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Berry, you made reference that the state said it's not a requirement for this particular building that you're getting ready to deal with now, but they do require that you obtain professional development. And I heard you mention ESSA, and I wasn't expecting you to answer that question. I was expecting Ms. Polk to answer that question, because the money is coming out of the business office. And if you're going on a conference and whatever the cost is, she should know. So I would like to know how much money that the ESSA is putting towards this versus what the district is spending. That's what I would like to know. Now, you're not supposed to be able to answer that. Mrs. Polk should be able to answer that for me.
But I can say that each school is getting a different amount.
I want to know what the difference is versus
exact amount.
Yeah.
Ms. Polk, are you prepared to answer that tonight, or do you need to circle back and answer that question?
And we can come back. That was a similar question posed by Ms. Lansing. We will come back with that, and so we can identify each school and what amount that they have.
Not against the conference. It's just the fact that
Sure.
I think it'd be noted that just for the public, because it's being asked.
Most definitely.
And I think that's the issue.
Agreed.
But if the state is paying a certain amount, I mean, that's what it's there for. And what it's used for, I noticed we got something coming down here, the W, where we talking about Urban Learning and Leadership Center service agreement. I don't know what that is, but I'm gonna find out when we get to it. Yeah, sounds like we on the same page though.
May I make a recommendation when we put this item up for action that we put that amount in the notes so that the board can see
Sure.
it, please?
We'll do it for each school so that it's very
Thank
clear
you.
what each school is receiving, and then what other budget line is going to be used to pay the balance of that. Sure.
Beautiful, because Superintendent, you were in line with where my mind was going. So for these types of items, when it's going to be essentially, and maybe this isn't the right word, you might change it, but essentially subsidized by another source of funding, because it is a hot topic with these meetings. If we could have that already embedded in the slide to essentially head these questions off, so then it's not a question. So we know these questions are coming, if we can anticipate it and build it in going forward, I think that would be helpful.
Yes. Board President, board members, superintendent, community, we probably will not pay for that with ESSER because with the survey that we just put out,
yes,
I needed to come and say that.
Yeah.
That we wanted to put all salaries in there to ensure that we expend all of the money by the established deadline without an extension. However, there's budget in their on their local side to cover these expenses. So it is going to be covered. So I thought I should say that.
Yeah, I think that the issue is versus SR. So Mr. Barry is saying is right? I think that's
we'll make sure to clarify and then come back with that amount stated. So, thank you.
Thank you. And I want to apologize. Typically, I would have done the presentation first. We only have 3 more items, and you've waited this long, Mr. Castellanos. So if we can get through those, and then I'll bring you up. And,
we appreciate your patience.
He's a board member.
And if we don't have questions, he won't have to suffer through the presentation. But but we'll go through these last 3, and I apologize because that was an oversight on my end. Smith IB training, that information is there.
Same concerns. Just making sure paperwork is tidied up.
Ms. Fabian, can you please speak into the mic so I can capture?
For all of the PD, it's always the same concerns, just making sure that all of the paperwork is tidied up and completely filled out so that we can be transparent.
Awesome. All right. V. Lewis Language, English Language Virtual Conference. Information is there. It's been presented.
I just want to make a comment. This just sings to my heart for 2 reasons. One, I mean, it's virtual. There's benefits to being in person in some of the conferences, but I like that this varies the format, and I love that it's targeted toward dual language. So, very exciting.
Thank you, Ms. Lindsay. And then Juarez Urban Learning and Leadership Center Service Agreement. So, that information has been presented. Finally, there was also North Elementary Boys and Girls Club. The information that's been presented there. Program, they talk about the information there, the cost, and the timeline. So if there were questions for Mr. Castellanos or the board, any concerns, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Board President. I think Mr. McBride had his hand up with with item W.
Correct.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that he had his...
Yeah, I wanted to really kind of get an understanding as what that agreement is.
Yes. ULLC is a learning partner approved by the state. Juarez is a year ahead of us in the middle school process, and this is something that they are approved partner with the state. We've already approved this contract, but it has run out of money. Even though the money is there, before we can go back and say, because the state want us to be accountable. So even though the state has given us that money, we needed to come back to the board and say, can you approve this addition? But the money is there provided by the state.
So what does that mean, urban learning? What I don't quite understand. I wanted to really get a grip of what do you mean by when you say urban leadership?
What they do, they're coming in, they're working with Principal Campos. They're actually going into the staff. They're visiting classroom. They're making recommendation for us to make changes in different things. And so they are the learning partner that's guiding the professional development.
Apologies, Mr. Barry. Can I jump in just a little bit, Mr.
Yes.
McBride? Is what he's asking is are they specifically recommended for schools in an urban district like District 60?
Yes, they are highly recommended from the state, and each middle school will be getting a learning partner, and so that is a part of the next process for the other middle schools that we're going through, but they are highly recommended by the state.
Any other additional questions for
Well,
that one,
I
Mr.
guess the reason
McBride?
I asked the question because earlier, the conference that you're going on, when I was listening at the information and the purpose for going to the conference is somewhat similar to what I'm hearing now. Unless I'm missing something.
If you just want to react to drive home the point is that this one is specific for Miguel Juarez, and the other one, so it is related to middle school. It is addressing some of the topics, but Miguel Juarez, is it because of their designation that they're a year ahead?
Yeah, they were designated a year ahead of us. The other middle schools will be getting learning partner. The state really wants to push the professional development, which is going to improve scores.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for catching Ms. McBride, too. I didn't see your hand. I apologize. North Elementary Boys and Girls Club, again, the information has been there. I know they've been partners. I don't know if the board has any additional questions. Ms. Fabian?
This was answered, but just for transparency's sake, and thank you. I was previously at Oakdale where we had a Boys and Girls Club after school, and it helped several families out, and I personally utilized it. So I think this is a great program, but just for transparency's sake, I see that the district is funding. A certain amount is Boys and Girls Club funding any amount.
This one's on? Okay. Good evening, Superintendent, Board President, partners in the community, as well as partners at North Elementary School, and Mr. Castellanos from the Boys and Girls Club. In looking at the needs of North Elementary School, Ms. Lemberger was thinking through ways to provide additional supports, especially for the after-school hours, and had known about the partnership through Mr. Castellanos doing some outreach. The current programs that we have at Oakdale are funded through grant opportunities through Boys and Girls Club. However, this particular proposal would be district funded at this time. We would obviously be looking for opportunities to apply for grant funding, but this would be, if approved, would be a district funded program.
Ms. Lindsay?
Sorry, can you clarify when we're anticipating to get the grant funding for it?
The grant funding is not currently in the plans, so I have budgeted in the SBB in order to address the needs of our school community.
Which I understand, but I believe, Ms. Patty, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but you had said we would look for grant opportunities, so I'm curious as to when that would be.
Sure, we are actively looking for grant opportunities. We will be forward thinking around how we can utilize current funding that Ms. Lemberger has within her current budget, as well as for the future school year. Any opportunities that we see come across that we can apply for, we'll make efforts in that vein.
Okay, and then are there other elementary schools that are in the same boat that we could look for as well while we're looking for North specifically?
I know Mr. Castellanos is doing some outreach with middle schools and looking at a couple of our other elementary schools. So when and if we identify those other partnerships, looping them into any grant potential would be a great way to make it available for more students.
I just want to make sure we're as proactive as we can possibly be as a district so that we can get as much grant funding as possible.
Definitely. And if I could just chime in here. Prior, under the leadership of Ms. McKenna, there was discussions on how we could partner with the Boys and Girls Clubs to expand services, because we've seen such a great benefit with the services that we've seen at Oakdale, and how that has supported our student body there. And so there was conversation of looking at an elementary school, a middle school. We wanted to go slow to go fast. So I'm glad to see this come to fruition at North with the community that could really use the services after school within that community. So thank you, Jermaine, for following through on that.
Ms. Fabian, and then I have a point. And then I heard you, Ms. McBride.
And then just to clarify, the reason that we're providing funds is because then the students would not incur a cost.
Mr. McBride, I'm sorry, I go Mr. McBride, Mr. Riddler, then I have a
Yeah,
comment.
so I was just wanting to ask, so what do your program look like? I mean, what are some of the components you're going to be using to enhance our students to make them better?
Sure. So my name is Jermaine Castellanos. I'm the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Lake County. We currently have eight sites across Waukegan and North Chicago. We have 3 sites in North Chicago. We have 5 sites in Waukegan. Currently, our programming is academic success, healthy lifestyles, and good character and citizenship. So good character and citizenship is service-based. We have, and it's mostly like in the middle school where the students, in middle school and high school where the students will do research on a topic, on a specific service area. It's a service learning curriculum, so then they would go out and do the service, right, that they choose to do as a leadership and service learning. Good character, healthy lifestyles. We have a Cooking Matters program where we teach the kids how to cook. A healthy meal. We teach them healthy habits in terms of social emotional learning, mental health, how to reach out to help for help. And then we have the academic success programming, which is, STEM, coding, with the up-to-date technology. We have after-school homework programs. So like the kids, they leave, instead of going at the school-based sites, instead of them leaving and going home, getting on the bus, they go down this hallway. And then these kids are able to, all right, like you get here, you dump out your backpack, let's look at what homework you have, let's work on it, like that. So that's the immediate thing that we do, is we work on homework and academic success as soon as they get there.
I just wanted to hear you give me a spiel.
Yeah.
And just for knowledge, when the Boys and Girls Club first came to Waukegan, they started off on Belvedere at the brewery factory with Father Gary.
Yep.
I introduced him to the building, and I think I stayed at the Boys and Girls Club 15 years. They didn't have but one site.
Yeah.
The first site was on Waukegan on the south side. Then our Hispanic started coming into the community. Then it opened up another site on Macquarie because they wasn't getting together. But I just wanted to, have you give me a spiel. But when the Boys and Girls Club came to Waukegan, like I say, they started at the brewery factory. And then there was a guy by the name Ed Shoemaker. I don't know if you heard the name. Decided to expand it a little farther. But I was at the pecking order when it first came to Waukegan. So I got about 15 years in the Boys and Girls Club. But I think it's going to be very helpful for whatever school you can get it in, because I know the curricula.
My first experience at the Boys and Girls Club was, I was working at the school district, and I went to visit Oakdale, and I was like, what's going on here? After school programming? Like, why don't we have this at every school? Because I went to Oakdale, and there was nothing there. I went to Carmen Buckner when I was a kid, and there was no after school program there. That where our current site is, the old Southside YMCA, I couldn't get in there. I lived 5 blocks away from there. I couldn't get in because you had to pay to get in. We had to sneak in through the door. When the basketball players got too hot, they would open the door. The gym door, we would sneak in and try to shoot around a little bit. But it's like we have this resource for the community where because I grew up in a neighborhood where there wasn't a Boys and Girls Club, and I saw what the neighborhood looked like before, and now to see what it looks like now, people don't graffiti our building, people don't break into our building, they respect the resources that we provide to the community, and as being a kid, I always say I'm the most selfish person you'll ever meet in your life, right? I only want to serve my 7-year-old self, my 10-year-old self, my 15-year-old self, right? At all of those different junctures, and that's what I try to do every day, is try to create more opportunities for kids in Waukegan.
Do they still have the building, the building for teenagers? Because one time the teenagers were able to cross the street. That building's still there?
Yeah, the building is still there, but now we use it as an administrative office because we moved out of another space.
Yeah, that building was put there because the teens weren't able to deal with the smaller kids, so we decided to open that building up.
And that's what we like going in. Like we wrote 2 grants this past year to open up a site at Edith Smith and at Abbott Middle School. And the kids, they don't want to be around. Even the 8th graders don't want to be around the 6th graders. They really want to be separate because they think and worry about different things. So we're trying to grow as much as we can, and just because we know that every day there's a kid like I said, like me when I was in 6th grade. You go home, lock the door, you can't go outside. Right? There was a shooting last weekend that you can't, and we want to be that safe place where kids can come and thrive. So,
thank you, sir.
Mr. Riddle.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you too. I'm glad we're partnering with you, and I just wanted a clarification for North School. Are those kids having to be transported down, or are you doing your program right at North School? Right at North School. Okay.
So after school, so our program runs every day that the school's open.
Yes.
We're there after school for 4 hours from dismissal to 7 p.m.
That's wonderful.
And then on days where there's professional development or the teacher, the kids are off school, we have full day programming at our Genesee site.
Great, thank you so much.
Yep.
I'm
and
really
the summer too, and I'll be talking to the summer school staff about summer. We're going to be doing. We actually last year we did a 6-week program, summer program, full day. Parents don't have to pay anything. from 8 to 5 p.m., 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And this week we want to do a end-to-end, like a 10-week program instead of, you know, an 8-week program. Because we heard from parents that said, like, now what am I supposed to do with my kids while I'm at work, you know? And so we're trying to serve the community the best way we can. So.
Yes.
Don't forget you got Focus next door.
I do.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yep.
Awesome. And very briefly, for me, money well spent. I know we're always looking for grants, but if we are willing to spend millions on outside organizations, having one that is trusted, true, has done it for
Right.
free for Waukegan Public Schools for a number of years, and this allows them to expand, right? I think sometimes is, you know, we shouldn't always be asking our community organizations to do it for free. If the district has the funds, if the schools recognize the investment, we should always be looking for those opportunities, right? I want the state's money just like anybody else, but where we can't find it or while we work towards that, I'm all for seeing it expand. The superintendent said under previous administration, executive director, and now under Mr. Castellanos is they've added almost doubled the amount of sites, right, and are expanded throughout the community. As we talk about extended day, we have STARS, we have JAMS, we have other programs, the community programs like Aunt Mal Foundation, Legacy After School. How do we continue to partner with these different organizations? And we shouldn't always be asking them to put up the funds. We should also be stepping up to say, how can we support you and partner with you? And where there are opportunities to go on grants together, we will. But if we are willing to provide millions of dollars for organizations outside of this community, we should be willing to put our money where our mouth is as it relates to community organizations that are here, that know our students, that are doing the work. So I appreciate you, Mr. Castellanos. I appreciate you, Ms. Limerick, for making sure that you have this resource for our students. So thank you so much. With that, I would like a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Riddle. Second by Ms. Fabian. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned. Take a 5-minute break, and then if we can come back. is 7:55. I'd like us to get going. If I can call to order the February 20th, 2024 Operational Services Committee to order. Roll call, please.
Ms. Gonzalez, Mr. Riddle,
Present.
Mr. McBride, Ms. Hannah, Ms. Lunsey, Ms. Fabian, President Ewing.
Here. So we do have four board members in the room. I believe Ms. McBride should be joining us any minute, but we do have a quorum. And for the sake of time, I'm going to continue. So we do have a discussion item, which is the Sodexo middle of year. The information has been presented. If we can bring up the agenda, I'll ask the board, were there questions? Did people have time to look at it? Do they want to go through the entire presentation? What are people thinking?
I mean, I feel they're here, right?
They are, but I know as board, yeah, it's.
Did they want to highlight?
They'll present. Mine
Did they
is-
want to highlight anything?
Does the board have any questions? Haven't been through it.
I just want to make one comment about the student advisory. I'm so happy to see them back and that they're helping out with you guys again. That's all.
I mean, I don't want to take the opportunity away from you all if you do want to present. But I know we do have a very thorough presentation. And I didn't know if there was maybe a slide you wanted to highlight or if there were specific questions that the board had or something that they wanted clarification on.
This is just more renewal for another year, so I don't believe there's anything out of the ordinary in there. We just invite them as courtesy in case the board does have any questions. LeBaron, is there anything that you feel we need to highlight? If not, it seems like we're ready to move on.
Thank you, Superintendent. Good evening, Board, Superintendent, staff, and community. As you mentioned, Mr. Ewing, there are several specific pieces of information here. There are two things I did want to highlight just for the Board's consideration. We do have the Sodexo staff here if you do have further questions. Mr. White, if you could scroll down, I want to fast forward quickly to the staffing slide.
Right.
As you can see, we've increased staffing by 21%. This is contractual, required in the contract with the provider. So we're trying to support as best we can our schools through staff. So they've had some very robust recruiting efforts in that area since the start of the school year.
Mm-hmm.
Now I would also like to fast forward to the slide regarding the meal distribution, which is an optional additional item the district is pursuing. If you could go forward, Mr. White. It's one of the last slides. This is going to be during spring break on March 25th from 8 to 3 p.m. at the Brookside campus to provide meals to families during spring break. And they are helping support the district with that.
Thank you. We know the unfortunate reality is that for many of our families and for society at large, school is the #1 source of, nutrition and food for our families. So we appreciate that opportunity that even while we're closed, we'll be able to provide food to those families.
Yeah. Board President, did we do that in December too? During December break?
During winter.
Did we have a distribution one day or something?
We did not do a distribution this winter break, Mr. Riddle.
Okay.
We have done that in the past, but this year we're looking at spring break.
Okay.
We actually moved it from the holiday season to spring break.
Okay.
To give it more time and to be more intentional in our endeavors.
Okay.
Awesome. And if that's, I know, I don't know costs associated, but given Mr. Riddle's question and the inquiry as well as my previous statement, that may be something that we want to look at.
Absolutely, and for this distribution, we did put it in the budget. Ms. Williams submitted in the budget for this additional support during this period.
Awesome.
Can I ask, are we asking a few questions then? Is that what's
If
happening?
you have questions, right?
Well,
That's
I
what
have a
I'm saying.
question then.
Go ahead.
So we increased our staff by 21%. Why did we do that, and how did that compare to the previous vendor that we had? I see that our meals, we started doing more meals too, so compared to the previous year. Lunches, and everything was up a little bit. Is that why we increased staff, or?
So to help answer that question, Mr. Riddle, I would say that contractually we have 114 positions in this contract. We did do a transition this summer from one provider to Sodexo, so that's part of the reason why the numbers were lower to start the year.
Okay.
But we've continuously tried to increase to the contractual number. We do have substitutes in place for some of the vacancies that are still pending, which is about 6 right now, or at the time of this presentation at the end of January. But that's why the numbers went up. transition, numbers, dip down. We're bringing them back up to make sure that we have staffing support at the schools per the contract.
Have we done any surveys from the student population to see how satisfied they are with this meal service? I know we had some taste testing earlier on, but have we actually followed up to do any? And I know that I thought this program was going to have that ability that students could respond and order things. I know that was part of the program. They could order new items, and they thought that might speed things up. Are we doing any of that? They can pre-order meals. That we were gonna. Are we doing any of that? I know I went through the taste testing in the beginning of the year, and the students that I was sitting around thought that the meal that we tried was quite good. I'm just curious, what sort of feedback we have from our students.
So I did ask the general manager about the app to see if
Can you speak into the mic so we can hear?
I asked the general manager about the app to see if they can tell how many parents and students are using it, and he wasn't able to provide the information for me. So I don't have a statistic on how they're using it, but he said he will look into that.
Okay, so we don't know if they are even using that pre-order format. Are we using, I know they were talking about more eco-friendly things, like I believe it was milk in a container, in a carton container, or water in a carton container instead of plastic. There was some.
They had water in the containers. There were water bottles that were cardboard. Do you also have those?
What's in cardboard?
Cardboard waters only.
Cardboard water. So we're using that.
Yes.
So that's a little more eco-friendly, right? Okay.
And our
be interesting to come back.
Disposables are eco-friendly.
What is that?
Our disposables for the cafeteria are eco-friendly.
Okay, disposable or eco-friendly. The serving things were, the tools or something that they were passing out, I think were.
Utensils?
The utensils were not plastic or something, were they wooden, or I can't remember.
No.
But
they're
what's more
individual
eco-friendly than the
cardboard, the plates, the cups?
Plates and cups, okay.
Like the stuff we have here.
Okay.
Recycling.
For recycling. Does the school recycle any of its products, though? Or do we just, everything goes in the waste disposal? We don't recycle, I don't think, do we?
But it's compostable, right?
We don't compost or dispose of anything in recycling.
So we have attempted that in the past, Mr. Riddle, with glass and cardboard, things of weight. But our trash hauler has said that if there's any cross-contamination, they consider it general waste.
Right.
So
So
we
we
attempt to, but sometimes if anything gets in that's general waste, they discard it as such.
I guess my ask would be then if we could do some sort of feedback from our students. I know we want to extend this contract for 1 year. That's what the proposal is. Could we do some sort of feedback from the student body to see what sort of, what satisfaction they have in the meals? If they have any concerns or complaints, or like to see anything differently. I know that they're also talking about changing or Big City Bites, some new programs coming up next year. Do the students know about that? What do they think about it?
So, Ms. Riddle, I think you had two questions there remaining. So the Big City Bites, they are not aware. That's a new campaign for the National Sodexo that they would be looking to roll out. Obviously, they're currently working on a 1-year contract, so this would need to be renewed for them to roll that out, but we can provide more details as the corporate has specifics on that. And if you go 2 slides prior to that, we can certainly survey the student population as a whole, but we did bring back a representative group of the student body similar to what we did last summer, which is for those in the audience, on the slide on the screen,
right,
to get their feedback on new menu items as well as their experience in the fall semester with the food service program. A lot of these students are consistent with the students that were there last summer. We did have some new faces, but a majority, or approximately half of the students, I believe, were in the tasting last summer.
Okay.
Sorry, to just clarify, were all grade levels included in this, like even our elementary students?
So this advisory group is 6 to 12.
So we're not getting
middle and high school.
the elementary perspective?
We can certainly include them on a survey for the general population,
Thank you.
but because this student advisory group comes intentionally in person, we were able to get products in front of them and get their qualitative feedback just from conversation with them.
Question?
Go ahead, Mr. McBride.
It seems like from the Sodexo to every vendor that we done had since I've been sitting here, it's always an issue, seem like. The last issue was when Michelle Obama did her initiative about eating right. There was an issue with that. And I think what you're getting ready to do, at least I done watched it done about 4 different times. You always go back and survey the students. And most of the time that since I've been sitting here, I'm sure she can contest to it because she's been around that long, that we generally go with the vendor that we always had. And but again, like I say, because the survey always wind up, I think the last time we had an issue with pizza. The last time some of the desserts and stuff wasn't right. But it's always something that every time it looks around, we always go back and survey the students, but we wind up coming back to the same point, to the same spot we left before we even got started.
I think there's a slight difference where there was recent change in legislation to where we don't have to take the lowest bidder where it comes to food services. So this is the first time that we've had one that we really got to choose more than just based on price. So I'd be curious to see what the survey says, knowing that we didn't choose the lowest bidder.
Oh, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about the students.
Yeah.
We're talking about going to serve. I mean,
Yeah.
we've done that over and over and over and over. But most of the time, the findings that you come back with will lead you back to where you started off at. But anyway, I'm not saying don't survey, but I'm just saying just my past experience. You know? I'm not saying don't go out and survey, but I'm just saying that once we've done that, every time we've done that, we always lead back to the same spot. So only thing that I can see different than that now that we haven't done is you getting ready to engage the elementary students now, because we didn't do that before, which is a good idea.
In both ends. So both of you guys are saying really, really good points, Mr. McBride. One of the things I hate is don't ask me my opinion if you're not going to listen to it, right? So don't survey me and then don't do anything that I said in the survey.
Exactly.
But the difference, what Ms. Lindsay is saying, is a lot of times you as a board member, or us as a previous board, we didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
So even if we said, hey, we're going back out to bid because the students hate the food, if they came back as the lowest provider, we were stuck with them anyway. And so it wasn't that you guys weren't listening as much as we didn't necessarily have the same options. Now with the change in legislation and us being able to have a say in how it's done, I think it is important. I'm with Mr. I'm in between, as I want to hear what they're saying, but it may not, necessarily change the outcome. It could, right? We don't know.
I mean, yeah.
Miss Fabian.
So I want to clarify, we have surveyed elementary school students before. We just gave them a simple smiley face. They fill in smiley face, they like it, sad face, they don't. The the little, so we have done it before, and that's how they were able to get some of that feedback, and that's how they would rotate. Like the ones that they always gave smiley faces to, that's why you saw them more often on the menu. So there is a way to survey them, and we have, so I just want to clarify that. But the other piece of it was we also did some education for the parents to understand why the food was what it was and the guidelines. And I think, right, because little kids are more hesitant to try foods, or if it looks different, it looks strange, it's something that you haven't had in your household and you haven't had those conversations. So I think the other piece of it is going back and also educating our community on these are the restrictions, this is the guideline, this is why we're getting, or you're receiving free lunch, right? Because they have to fall into these parameters. So I think that's another area that I guess we need to explore again to help support the kids actually eating the food, and they may not enjoy it as much, but understand that it's for their health benefit a little bit more. And with legislation, the other thing that I learned at the last conference is those guidelines are looking at changing again and becoming a little bit more stricter. So just thinking in the future that if we do extend for the year, that if those guidelines change, that they will also be flexible to be able to change their menus to that.
Yeah. Mr. Riddle, final point.
Okay, final question. I see the recommendation is to extend the contract for 1 year. When would we have to make that decision? And is there even time to ask the student body on some kind of survey what their satisfaction is? And then And then would this extension be at the same rate, or would it be going up? It doesn't tell us here.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Riddle. So, as the board is aware, we went through this process about a year ago. It is rather extensive. We wanted to provide Sodexo due diligence and really look at the fall data because they're a new vendor. Their menu items are different. Although they have the same nutritional requirements, there is challenge in transition. And there's challenges at the start of the school year, regardless of what vendor is in place. So we wanted to have a good look at the fall data before making a recommendation to you. This was approximately the timeline last year where we made the decision we were required to, because we were at the 5-year mark, to do a RFP process. So with the data we've presented this evening, as well as the feedback we got from the students recently in grades 6 to 12, who could, speak for themselves, their experience. It wasn't just the quality of the food, it was about their daily lunch experience. Do you have enough time? Is there enough variety? How long does it take you to go through the serving line, et cetera? All those factored into the equation for the recommendation. So that is what we're recommending, because we are anticipating that the quality of options and service, et cetera, the experience will continue to improve as it has over the course of the fall semester. So I hope that answers your question. The survey in and of itself, we did get the qualitative feedback, we can issue it, but the survey information that may be provided some of that would be applicable to most likely any vendor that had the service. Some of the staffing information we presented this evening, which was critically important to us, we're always talking about recruiting and retention, making sure we fill our staffing levels in all job classifications was extremely important. Sodexo has been working with us on the whole year, and that's feedback that the students most likely would not, they don't really see that on a day-to-day basis, so we tried to take a comprehensive approach with this recommendation.
Thank you. I think if there's some way to incorporate a survey, even if I know we had the comprehensive, but outside of just the taste test, even what things do they like, how can we improve, sure. What things are they looking for, I think it would help the board in not making the decision, but for us to better understand how we can continue to improve.
And we certainly want the feedback for the menu items, their experience, because we do want to improve. We're just recommending that we stick with our same program because it's easier to make the improvements with what we have versus starting from scratch all over again.
Yeah. Okay. So we have information items. This is a big one, item 5A. Thank you to Sodexo. I appreciate you guys coming out too. Is the increase in substitute pay. We can bring it up just on the PowerPoint. I do want to shout it out for the community. Let me just scroll down to keep going. Mm-hmm. So current rate. 130. So the information is there. Current daily rate is 130. Long term subs are paid at 237. Keep going. All right, so this is the comparison. Keep going. So the recommended action is to move from 130 to 145, an additional $15 per day for daily subs, and then to increase from 237 to 250 a day for long-term subs, effective March 1st, 2024. Any questions, comments, concerns? Go ahead, Ms. Lindsay.
I mean, anytime we have an opportunity to pay people more, I'm excited about it. One question I had, and this only comes up because, well, there's a few reasons, but one of the reasons it comes up was I was able to attend Juarez today for the African American Museum presentation by the England Manor. And Miss Sylvia England was a staple in our district, and she noted that she was also a substitute principal. So have we looked at what substitute principal pay would look like as well, or is that something that we can look at in the future as we're talking about substitutes?
I can answer that, Ms.
Okay.
Lindsay. No, we have not looked at that. However, that question has come up previously, and that is something that we do need to revisit.
Okay.
even in my conversations with Ms. England. So
Beautiful.
duly noted, and it is something we need to look at.
Thank you, but this is exciting.
Ms. Fabian?
I agree. It allows us to compete with other districts because I don't know if people read that initial slide. They are not WPS employees, so they get to choose where to go. And so if you're looking at that rate of pay, right, this is a little bit more enticing. I just kind of want to know a little bit more about the sustainability piece. Like if we know that we're having a lot of subs, like how many are long-term versus how many are day-to-day, have we kind of crunched numbers to see that this is a sustainable system?
Yeah, so we approximately have 100 long-term subs and 20 daily subs. I'm going to speak a little to this, and Mr. Figueroa can supplement me if I speak incorrectly, but sustainability is at the core of everything we do. We've noticed, and this came about in 2022 when we increased the daily and the long-term rate by $20 per day, similar to what we're presenting this evening, that we have to be comparable with other districts. Pay is one thing, their experience is another, but this is really a starting point, similar to discussions we had when the board ratified the teacher's contract. We do believe that this will help retention. Our long-term subs are incentivized to be here, but as the 9 peer districts, as you see on the screen, shift, we have to shift with them. And we think this is a good right step, and we'll continue to shift in the future if there's other improvements the other districts make. But as far as sustainability, we think this comparability is sustainable because we know we're dependent on long-term subs to fill our vacancies as well as our daily absences.
And I hate to say it, Ms. Fabian. One, I see Ms. Polk, she's making faces, so it's not good faces, right? I hope, but it is. It's going up, but it's also a wash. We're not paying for those vacancies. So we would have a full-time District 60 teacher in those classrooms. If we don't, we're not paying that salary cost. So while it's a necessary evil, again, we have to look at other things like PD cut from other areas, but it's essential. Going back to Mr. Sabecki's point, we would prefer to have a certified staff member in front of them. If we can't have a certified staff member in front of them, we need to have a substitute. And then if we don't have if we can't have a substitute, right, then that's when we run into bigger issues and other things. So I think it's a step in the right direction. I think it's, we may be a little bit of the cat chasing its tail. Like, I just feel like we're going to get in a cycle. So we do really want to be working with the state and even our surrounding districts on a long-term strategy, because we shouldn't just be going up $2 and competing against one another. We should be actively working to solve the problem. So thank you all for that, and I definitely support Mr. Riddle.
Yeah, the only other thing I guess I'd say is, along with that increase, and I'm pleased to see it, what other efforts are we making, since we've heard from some of our subs that the experience, as you said, is not what they would hope for. They feel like there's no training, there's no sense of belonging, there's no booklets that's given to them. They don't have access to our website, or they can't even pull up teachers' lessons plans. Are we looking at any of that? Have we surveyed our subs to see what is their biggest gripe? Is it pay, or is it the experience? Do we know?
Yeah, so Mr. Riddle, we have not done a broad survey, but we are looking at that because they are district employees when they're in our district. So they should be provided a lot of those opportunities similar to our full-time and part-time staff in other areas, because some of those, they shouldn't be barriers to do their job. So we're looking at that.
Can I help with this?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think, Mr. Riddle, this falls more on the academic side of the house, but I do know that long-term subs were invited to Great Beginnings this year. Ms. Patty, do you want to just touch on this? And Mr. Riddle can ask this question again, because I know our, academics was over. But just what supports have we given our long-term and daily subs that are different this year in comparison of last year? Have we surveyed them for employee satisfaction, which I know the answer is no on that, but can you just shed some light here from the academic side of the house?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. One of the main pieces of feedback that we did hear from our long-term substitutes was that they are staying for additional time before and after the school day, staying for professional development, coming in early, staying late, working with coaches, coming in on Saturdays, things like that. And in those instances, certified teachers are compensated for that additional time that they are providing. Recently, we were able to work with Human Resources, and at the direction of the superintendent was also to move down the opportunity for long-term subs to receive that similar compensation for this additional time that they are providing to learn more deeply about the curriculum, to have more support from the coaches, and spend more time with their team on planning. And so we have been able to collaborate across academics and human resources to ensure that those long-term substitutes are receiving the opportunities and the compensation. We did provide long-term substitutes in orientation at the very beginning of the school year to go over some information around just day-to-day, how to do some classroom management, how to access some information regarding their school, who to go to in their school, and some of the things that we are working on with teaching and learning for Great Beginnings this upcoming fall will be to include long-term substitutes at Great Beginnings, as well as the monthly and throughout the school year, the mentoring opportunities that our first and second year teachers receive. Long-term substitutes will be able to piggyback on some of those meetings. And so we do have some things that we have put in place and do have other plans for the future as well.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to hear that. It looks like you've really been taking that into consideration because that experience of our long-term subs is very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Ewing, just briefly, we want to make sure the board is fully informed. It's not on the slides, but it will be when we bring this action forward, the financial impact. So for March 1st through the end of this fiscal year, we're looking at a financial impact of $50,968 for the long-term subs, $19,440 for the daily subs, and an annual cost of $192,000 for the long-term subs and $63,000 for the daily subs. So that information will be in the agenda item when we ask the board to take action.
Awesome. Thank you. So we have 5B, purchase of furniture for Abbott and Glen Flora. C, attendance at National Schools Public Relations Association's 2024 seminar. D, Waukegan High School Odyssey Prom. Go ahead, Ms. Lindsay.
Board President.
I'm a bit confused on this one because I thought they had elected Pinstripes to do the prom. So is that not this year's prom but next year's prom? Like where's the disconnect? And then on top of that, nope, that's my question.
So you are accurate, Ms. Lensing. It is at Pinstripes this year. This is for next year.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
All right, that's good.
And I apologize.
Right.
We'll make that clear. We did note 2025 in the
2025.
agenda item
It is-
title,
does
but we'll
say
make that clear when it comes back to the board.
I do want to share Ms. Hannah's concern. She had a question related to, again, I know students have say. Mr. Hill, you can help me out, but roughly 900 to 1,000 students in the class, only expecting half of them to be able to participate. Is there, in talking with the students, do they understand the impact of this decision and that almost half of that class wouldn't be able to attend? Are there cheaper, more affordable options that may mean more people have this opportunity and access? And then if it's 520, has it changed? But is this for both juniors and seniors, or is this only seniors? Like, you know, when I was in school, this was a big thing. So I do know that Ms. Hannah's concern was the 520. And again, maybe information for me, I do apologize because the attachment was there. And if it's there, I apologize. But is this for both juniors and seniors? So let's start there.
So starting with the juniors and senior question, yes. We have looked at that, and one of the things with the Odyssey crew, it is very popular. Students do like going to that. And we've also looked at some of the trends over the last few times we went to Odyssey, and those numbers have hovered around 500 or so. Like, I think last year was a little bit more, so we have a little bit of wiggle room in that contract to be able to do some things, and we have to add a couple students on here and there. But we didn't want to be on the hook for saying 1,000 and only 500 actually pay, because we're having to put those deposits down a year in advance. That is something we're looking at this year. There has been talk what we're doing this year with Pinstripes is actually open up the window earlier and encouraging students not to wait until May 1st to buy the tickets.
Yeah.
And then open it up for seniors first, so that seniors have the opportunity first to purchase prom tickets, And then once that expiration date, then it's opened up again for juniors.
See, and that's a change. Again, we know Ms. Hannah, tradition, it was a junior prom and seniors were able to attend because seniors had homecoming. So I don't know if that's changed with student council, but those are some of those things where when we
Yeah, and some of these things, like the numbers have, like after COVID, the popularity is coming back. And so it's reassessed like what we did last year, now the local one this year with Pinstripes, getting the popularity back up for prom. We'll be making those adjustments. But with all these particular things to reserve the dates, we have to do them a year out. So it's that's where it becomes tricky in terms of like making those predictions.
It does. Her other concern was related to it being on Friday. She thinks that puts our young ladies at a disadvantage as we talk about attendance.
This one is Saturday.
Oh, she said.
I think that's the same disconnect as the
Thinking it
2025
was this
detail.
year
Thinking it's
versus
this year because the
next year. So
third
it's a year
is
that
Friday
make
this year.
Okay.
But on top of that, it
And I
looks
see you, Ms.
like
Fabian.
the deposit was due January 6th, 2024. So help us understand, was that placed and this is retroactive?
No, so it's when the club sponsors work with the particular vendor, depending on the time when they're actually having these conversations and it actually going through the process with legal and contracts, they're basically just saying, right now the date's available. That's when they would like it, but as soon as we can make those payments. There's also been some back and forth when it comes down to prom because it's a student activity thing. Does this process require it versus, in the past, we didn't have to come to the board. We just went and paid the bill because the students are actually the ones paying for it. But now because of the way we're managing things, we're actually bringing it before the board, which takes a longer process.
And so I want to first off 2 points. I want to affirm the work that you are doing. The fact that students will be able, if still a part of the incentive program, earn and pay and cover for the cost of the prom ticket through good behavior, earning different points, etc. Is that still accurate?
For some, yes.
Would it be accurate for next year? So if they start now, can they earn points for this event? Because that's part of where I think students are waiting because, help me if I'm wrong, but it's over $100 from the student contribution. So if I'm buying a ticket for me and my date, which I hope our young people are still doing, then that would be $200. And while we go, that may be an expectation in other communities, I think that that's a barrier in ours. So again, I want to give students voice, but I do have to echo Ms. Hannah is the concern is, what is kind of our max? So if we put the deposit down and then we 6 months into it, can we call and say we have 200 more, or is it this is kind of it? And if it is, are the students aware of what that decision actually means? It's because I think part of why we see low participation is the travel, the distance. Parents don't trust, right? I don't right, wrong, or other. I think it's safer that we transport them and put them on our buses and bring them back. Right. But not everybody is comfortable with their students going away to prom. Not everybody can afford the $200, the dress, the makeup, the hair, the everything else that comes along with it. So that's my 2 cents. I'm speaking up for my board member who's not present, but I do share some of her concerns.
And to help with those costs, like we've been budgeting for the last 2 years to actually pay for the transportation when we go to Odyssey. Because that price could be significantly more. We've been trying to keep it steady. By covering the transportation costs, we're actually helping the students out.
So we're covered.
That was my question and my concern was how much the ticket prices are for our students. Do we know approximately? I'm sure if you divide it up,
$125.
And then is that why we're seeing also low numbers, right? If we have 2,000 students, potentially that could go, but 125. I'm sorry, my kids aren't going. It's a lot. And like you said, because you're still adding in the dress, the makeup, all of the 9 yards. That's a huge barrier. So if we move to something more local that's a little bit lesser in price, are we planning ahead to see an increase in more ticket sales to ensure then that more than 500 kids can then attend?
And that's one of the reasons we do the boat every other year. It's popular. It's more, costs more to go to the boat, and we do something local that actually helps. But again, because we're covering the cost of that transportation, we're actually keeping it steady year to year. So what they're paying this year and what they're paying next year will be very similar. And it's prom. It's going to be expensive. Things are going more. So we're doing our best, and that's pending funding every year if we have the ability to be able to continue to pay for those transportation costs. But it's what it costs.
Hey, how much a pair of gym shoes cost? Them Jordans cost?
Right.
How much a boat throwback jersey cost? Don't tell me they can't afford it.
But they wear
That's-
them
yeah.
every day. Okay, that's not.
That's prom.
Ms. Lindsay?
Have we explored the idea, because we have some students that are not interested in prom, it's not their thing, but they have skills like doing hair, like doing makeup, like doing lashes, like doing nails. We have young gentlemen that are learning to be barbers, or they can line themselves up nice, they can do it for others. Are we exploring either tapping into our students or community volunteers to help offset some of these things by having a spot in the gym, like a get ready for prom party, some sort of event? Yeah, I know there's like donating like dresses and that sort of thing, but are we activating our students in any way to help with that?
With the hair and makeup piece, not specifically, but yeah, we always have like, we have a closet full of like clothes and stuff that we do on an annual basis. But the hair and makeup, no, we haven't explored it, but that's a good
So
idea.
to speak up for our previous student board member, Ms. Gutierrez, maybe if we can ask members, the students, we're not recommended. I don't know how it worked. I know there's different things, but how we had the entrepreneur board for students that had services that they could provide. Maybe if we relaunch that.
It's
and
still
have
there.
trivia-
It hasn't went away.
Okay, good.
That board is still up and active. It's been updated. So students, but those students also want to get paid, and so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're not saying
But
they do it
they-
for free. We
but
put
they
the
don't-
service out there.
but they don't
You gonna pay
cost what-
somebody.
yeah.
But again, it's there. Our questions are noted. I do know this is for next year. I know, again, the students, I don't want to take away their voice. My only other question or comment or concern, typically what you see, in my opinion, and this is from my experience, which is now dated, right? The most involved students were the ones who were in those rooms that were making those decisions as it related to what was going to happen for prom. And what I'm saying is, have we looked at what the student body is saying as a whole, right? Because if we survey the student and the majority kind of rules and says we're going to do the vote, then Brandon doesn't have anything to say. But if it's 10 or 15 students that are making this decision for the other 2,000, I don't feel as good about that, especially with what we're asking for, not only from the individual costs, but to your point, Mr. Hill, we're still subsidizing a lot of this in order to keep it at what that cost is, right? So
Right. And there becomes a point and limit in terms of like, because think about your own kids. At some point, you got to say you wearing a red shirt or the blue shirt, and then they give them that option. But the students, we have a junior class and we have a prom committee. So all students have the opportunity to be a part of those committees or talk to the committee members about what their particular vote or option is. But at some point, we got to make a decision.
Question. I don't want to keep shortchanging our kids, man. I'm saying that because I said it earlier. Air Forces, the Jordans, they walk around with them, and I guarantee you, every student that you talking about got an iPhone in their hand, and them iPhones start at $500 and $600 on up. So we talking about $100-something. So we keep. I ain't finna sit here and listen to a short stage not shooting about $100. There's a lot of them probably walking around with $100 in their pocket. Don't underestimate our kids.
yeah, it's not about for me, affordability is part of it. The other point is if we're doing something and only 500 students out of 2,000 eligible, and I know they all ain't eligible, so I get it, but about 2,000 of them that have the opportunity to go to prom, is to me there seems to be a disconnect between what it is that we're doing, how it's like, it could be football. Our kids just no longer interested in it. But from what I see on my social medias and what I see with my friends that have high school students, it is still a major excitement and expense for those families. And I just want to, because my board member is not here, and we get calls about it because parents are not thinking about next year's prom. So when we make this decision and then it comes up and your number, I know we got some wiggle room, but I got to say it, your number 562 and your kid didn't get there or didn't put the deposit down till May 1st, and now you're upset and board members are getting calls and then you getting calls and the superintendent's getting calls because we're trying to get other people on the boat, right? It happens.
And we're taking all that into consideration, the publicizing, we're opening the window now, we were thinking about everything from windows, tax returns typically come in, all that kind of stuff is like open the window then because we used to open it in the spring. So we're thinking about all that, and the push is to pay, because we got, at the end of the day, I'd rather I gotta say it. Come to the board and say, hey, I had to deny 10 kids from going to prom, then come to the board and say, hey, I need $50,000 because that other 500 group of kids didn't show up and pay for prom. So at the end of the day, we got to pay a year in advance, and so we just have to we look at trends, and that's been around the number that have been going. We're auditing those things right now, our club and our athletic participation, and so we'll have a better pulse of the student population in terms of what's been a deterrent, because I don't want to assume that it's money. It might not be money. It could just be that, for some students, prom isn't a thing anymore. But we'll have that information once we finish with our audit that we're going through this year. But for right now, it's a matter of us being able to put that deposit down for what they want to do for next year.
If the recommendation still comes forward next week, I will support it. I just have to make sure that I vocalize.
Yeah, we'll see the numbers this year when we go locally, so we'll see what it's like, and if it's picking up popularity, then.
I just want to clarify a couple of things. One, and because I also want to highlight it, Miss Gina over at AOEC does do that pre-prom makeup for her diverse learner students. So she does coordinate an event like that. So I mean, I know that that's something that is possible, where they bring everybody in one room into the cafeteria Brookside and get everybody ready. And she does that every year, which is wonderful. I love that she does that. Two, we also have had community partners donate, free manicures, free, hairstyles, all of that. So that could probably be added to your PBIS incentives too, if that's something that they want to purchase with that. And then three, just if we're looking at the juniors and seniors this year are planning for 2025, shouldn't it really be the sophomores and the juniors, because the seniors are going to be gone in 2025?
No, juniors and seniors are the group that's eligible to go to prom.
Right, but I'm saying the planning part of it, you have current juniors and seniors planning for 2025, but the seniors will be gone. So really it should be sophomores and juniors planning for 2025. Does that make sense?
It's whoever's on the prom committee. So that committee is not limited to juniors and seniors. It could be freshmen through senior year.
Okay, so there are other grade levels, because I just want to,
all of
if
our
I'm a
clubs are
sophomore,
open to all.
that's my opportunity next year, and nobody in my grade level is giving that voice or that opinion.
No, the prom committee is open to
everybody. Okay.
Yep. All right, thank you.
Installation, right? So you heard that. So if Ms. Lensing is volunteering, Mr. Hill.
Oh yeah. I'll be a
Chaperones. He's
I gotta
always.
work on my dance moves though. These kids. Whew.
But installation of additional video surveillance cameras at Little Fort Elementary. Speaking up for my other board member who's not here, right? There's always concern about additional policing. I think, unfortunately, in today's age, I will support the cameras. I feel like we vote on cameras every year. I want to see them installed. So that would be my only feedback related to that item. F, West Insurance Agency consultant renewal for 2024.
Question on that, Board President.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Riddle.
Yeah, just a question. $18,000 for their consultant fee. Has that gone up from last year? And if so, how much?
Yes, it did go up from last year. It was 15,000, so it went up 20%. It's 18,000 this year.
Okay. And we still feel like we've had West for a long time.
Yes,
we feel
we
like
have.
they do a lot for that
They do.
money. Okay. All right. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Sorry, question, is it an annual 20% increase, or we've had the contract for so long and now it's increased the 20%?
We've had the contract for so long, and this is the first increase. Yes, it is annual, but it didn't go up last year.
Okay.
So.
All right.
G, Special Education, Homeless Student Transportation Services, request for proposal information. Items are there. February 20th, so that's today. I know, we'll just read the timeline. I would say, Mr. Moden, as you've done in the past, if you can coordinate with the local chambers as along with the Waukegan Greater Development Coalition, as they have a program specifically to reach out to potential vendors and help navigate the process. So this is one where I do believe some local businesses or even those close in proximity have a good chance of being able to meet the requirements. And so it may be a good opportunity to give some local entrepreneurs an opportunity. Seeing as there are no other questions or comments, item H, anticipated capital improvements for FY24 and 25. Ms. Lindsay.
Sorry, I know there's been some concern, and maybe I overlooked it because my eyes are going bad nowadays. There's been concern with the traffic in getting to Lightfoot with that private road. Has that been in discussions? I'm not seeing it here. I'm not saying it's not. I'm hoping it's my eyeballs, but has that been part of discussions?
Yes, Ms. Linsing, that's been in discussions recently. We have recently, as of today, filled the potholes there, but we are currently reviewing that further before we commit to anything because we believe there may be a small section of that that doesn't belong to the school district.
Understood. Great, thank you. Yeah, because I'm just gonna say traveling that road was rough.
Hopefully, it was better this afternoon.
Oh, I don't drop off there anymore.
So like I say, it
Thank
took
you.
all of those years of me going and cook, and the parents just shaking their head as I bobbed along. So go ahead, Miss Fabia.
I'm just looking at the spreadsheet where the status is, like those drop downs aren't filled in. I would just kind of like to see what has been started, because this is a long list and some of these have, been approved for a while now, and I know some of these have been started or have been completed. So it'd be nice to just highlight that and say, wow, like we're moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Check. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if I could speak briefly on this, because this is a little different format than we've presented in the past. In the fall, I believe we gave a completion project presentation to the board. We can certainly note that here. But we wanted to provide you just an image on the base document that we look at internally. So last April, the board approved $35 million resolution for capital improvements. So we did this in a way to show you what started last year, what we're planning for this year and potentially next year, as well as to show it's within that resolution amount. Mr. Ewing, you made a comment about Ms. Polk's face earlier. We work in collaboration.
I'm sorry,
with
Ms.
her
Polk. I
office.
shouldn't have did it.
Anytime big dollars are out there, her eyes light up. I know. So but we felt it was important to highlight for you the fact that this is, we believe, to be within that resolution, and this is a hybrid of things that have been identified in the past as well as new items. I have Mr. Nickerson Hill, the new district construction manager, items that have been noted that have become urgent priorities within the course of the last school year. So it is comprehensive. We can certainly add information that shows completion, but we felt it was important that you all saw the full comprehensive document that's within that board resolution you approved last April. And it's on the screen. Thank you, Mr. White.
Yeah.
I think that's why I kind of want to see it.
Well, I think the thing is just to have a status column be fully empty, right? I think that's the only piece, but I understand it's a very intense and comprehensive spreadsheet, which is appreciated. But if we have like that completed, we can show, hey, it's completed, and then the next time we won't see that line item there. But
And
very exciting.
my funding source for parking lots. Very excited. Let's keep it. Again, so thank you for the work of the Capital Improvement Committee and all of the efforts, and for the Board of Education for putting those funds aside to make sure that we are continuing to expand and improve the actual physical spaces in our district. I think it's necessary, and it's about time. And I want to say kudos to our maintenance team and all those there, along with our finance team, who work very, very close together to make sure that we are able to complete these projects at a very aggressive rate. So thank you.
And we do have a lot of items listed here. Thank you, Mr. Ewing. We have a lot of items listed here, so if you do have questions in the future, please let us know. For some of these items, particularly in the addition section, which is starts at row 36, you may see some of those items in the near future for board action. so we
No,
can
thank
move
you.
forward.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. All right, the other ones are there for reports. I'll go through them just in case there are questions, but remember your questions. Never mind. 6A Wraparound Center update. That information has been presented. I do also see Ms. Dotson in the audience. Are there any questions related to item 6A? Item 6B, Schedule of Investments Report.
Oh, Miss Dodson, did you want to talk?
Up to you.
No,
It's your
she's
baby. Let's
Hello,
go.
everyone. Good evening.
Go ahead, Ms.
Any
Dotson.
questions?
Did you? Yeah.
Well, okay. It's basically really similar to what I last reported on in terms of the update. However, we do have some good news. One of which is on the 1st of February, IC just shared with us that we had a very positive, they're calling it an expenditure or financial exam. So all of the expenditures toward regarding the wraparound have been approved. So that was good news. As well as last week, I spoke with the grant administrator for ICEGA and requested a few months, since we're having a later start than we all anticipated, at least to go into the fall, to allow us to have more opportunity to provide those outcomes with providing the direct services. So he responded with even better news than I thought. So we now have an extension that is June 1st of 2025. So I then responded and made an inquiry last Friday, and he responded today and asking if we could have that information in writing, that June 1st, 2025. So today I did receive an email that would be forthcoming. And I thought, just keep trying. So I said, well, may I ask, what's the ETA on the final determination for our service providers, our sub-grantee awards? And he's hoping that it's this week. So that too is in writing. So I thought I'd share that bit of good news. So.
And to my board members, and even with my community-based organizations, I want to say two things. I want to thank the state for putting these resources and making them available. And I also want to encourage our legislators and the organizations that there has to be a more streamlined process in order to get these resources and these monies into the community. Because it's one thing to do a press conference awarding millions of dollars. It's another thing as somebody who works in finance and is the banker for a lot of these CBOs, don't have these people on here telling the community that they have all this money, and then it take you a year in order to get it into their pocket so that they can actually do the work. So that's my public service announcement, because I know how hard you worked on this, Ms. Dotson.
You said that as the board president. I did not.
And I know that they're trying too. They've increased staff. They have meetings. They're much more responsive. I love the effort. But at the end of the day, if that money is not in the bank, if those approvals are not coming through, organizations, and I know Ms. Polk always says that, we can somewhat afford to front the money, but to those other organizations, and even it may potentially stop these organizations from being able to hire, because it's hard for them to extend offers if they don't have the assurity that they will be able to fund the positions. So it is important work, and I do honor it, and I thank you for all your efforts.
And I thank you for that. I just want to say in passing that the revisions have been going back and forth really since January with the two agencies that we've identified and moved forward with. And I am, sometimes I do become a bit nervous, but what they've expressed to me as recently as a week and 2 weeks ago that they're in it. So I think that says something. They are committed, and it's whatever you need from us. So I just want the community to hear that they are definitely invested.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, item B, we have our schedule of investments report. Item C, we have our treasurer's report. And then item D, we have our student activity and convenience account, bank reconciliations. Ms. Fabian.
I can't open them up, so I don't remember if it was C or D, but just looking at, we have a lot of student activity accounts like clubs and PTO accounts, and just from experience, sometimes the clubs or the PTOs don't know that money is there. So because leaders change over time, and then when the new leader comes in, they're not aware of those accounts. So when we're reviewing these accounts and we see that they're dormant, I know after some time you eventually roll them over, but are we reaching out to the schools to see, is there a new leader, to be able to inform them, hey, there is some funding for your club or for your parent organization?
That's a good question, because the board did ask us sometime before, after that year, I'm sorry. After that year, to contact them, but then we have the authority by board action to move it into another account. And so, yes, we are contacting those individuals, but if we get no response, then we move it into an account that needs money, like the prom or some other account.
Is there a way that we're not waiting for a year, but like at the beginning of each year when we know that the club leaders are there or the PTO leaders are there, that we're notifying schools, hey, reminder, go through your club lists and see who needs access to these accounts? Just because we often see, you know, they're looking for funding and fundraising all the time, and sometimes the money is there and they're just not aware.
Yes, we could certainly do that. That document is public. You know, we post it every time we have an operations meeting, but we could certainly forward a copy. There's a lot of initiatives that need the money. A lot of times, like you said, they're gone. And because like a club was closed, we were able to fund the pool. You remember some time ago, we had that intergovernmental agreement with the pool. So those dormant accounts, we were able to shift the money to those things that are a higher priority. Because if the money has been sitting there for years, we could use it somewhere else. So, absolutely. Yes, but we can certainly forward those reports to those club leaders and let them know the money's there, or to the principals. I think that would be ideal, because we wouldn't know who the leaders are. We could forward it to the principals.
Thank you.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Motion by Ms. Lindsay, second by Ms. Fabian. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.